Pirates Fire Dragon Roar Chapter 201-220. Chapter 221 From the Moon. It is really a wonderful experience, very wonderful. No matter who is standing where Vlad is standing now, they will be sincerely shocked. X23 US. Com updates fastest. It is a simple truth. It is obviously the remains of ancient people on another planet that I do not know how many years ago, but the text used is not much different from the text currently used on the Blue Sea. The same root and the same origin. This is really something that can scare people to death. For those with a little knowledge, the things here are really things that can make people crazy. This is a discovery that is enough to subvert people's three views. For example, these words. The chef changed his usual calmness and stared at the murals on the wall. His whole person was dumbfounded. What's going on? Are the words used by these ancient moon people actually the words of Blue Sea? What the hell is going on? Don't tell me. The chef swallowed a mouthful of saliva with some difficulty, and said loudly, "Are we all from the moon? Was the place where the moon that originally lived in this place moved to actually the Blue Sea? They left their hometown and went to the Blue Sea. See? Could it be that the moon is the source of the civilization of the Blue Sea? How is that possible? Could it be that the 100 years of history that the government has concealed is like this?" The chef said a little bewilderedly, "Is this the hidden history? We are not creatures of the Blue Sea, are we just descendants of creatures from alien planets? Aren't we the first owners of that beautiful sea, but the later predators?" The chef said in disbelief, "Is this the truth of history?" It's natural to be surprised, just like the Earth people who knew that humans evolved from apes at the beginning, their own origins, the origin of civilization, everything has been denied. Such a feeling does not matter to ordinary people. After all, it has nothing to do with oneself. Even if it is true, what can be done? But for some people, this is indeed a piece of news that can blow people's three views. A clear example is that behind the panicked cook, there is a maid who can even take a leisurely smoking cigarette and a musician lady who observes the mural with great interest. Saying that there is no difference between whether you are a Blue Sea person or a lunar person. What happened hundreds of years ago has nothing to do with them at all. Just watch the fun. What are you thinking about? Vlad smiled and patted the shocked chef on the shoulder, and said with a smile, "Chef, you think too much. It's just the same words, but it doesn't explain so many things." But the chef wants to argue, but the words alone have explained enough things, right? It is obviously separated by the vast space, and it is obviously the text used by the ancient moon people for hundreds of years, but it is still used on the Blue Sea to this day. No matter how you look at it, there is no connection between the two, right? Haven't noticed yet? Vlad turned his head to look at Enel, who was also stunned, and said with a smile, "An interesting point. These ancient moon people also had wings." Yes, in these murals, the ancient moon people also have small wings behind them. Although they are small, they are like angels, just like Sky Island people. Yeah, ha 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 ha. Enel suddenly burst out laughing. So it is, this is really the infinite land. This is really where our ancestors came from. Enel was absolutely convinced of this at the moment. That man was right after all. This place is really the hometown of Sky Island people, and it is indeed the legendary infinite land that deserves it. So it is. The chef quickly calmed the surging in his heart, and the calmed man easily saw what Vlad said. It really has wings. That is to say, is this actually the hometown of the Sky Islanders? Hey, it does look like that. Vlad replied casually, observing the beginning of the murals on the wall. It can be seen that these murals were inscribed by these Sky Islanders before they left, and there are faint traces of removal. They should have been inscribed with the original murals removed. Perhaps the purpose is to let later people know about this country. History, right? This city, the ancient city built on the moon, Burka, was not originally built underground. The murals clearly show this. At the beginning, the moon was not as dead as it is now, just like the islands on the Blue Sea, although not to mention full of life, at least it is rich in vegetation and lush. Burka is built in a forest. However, With the passage of time, the level of science and technology of the lunar man has shown an explosive growth. The rapid progress of science and technology has not brought a better life, and the demand for various resources has increased sharply. This small planet gradually overwhelmed. The grass and trees are gradually withering, the lakes are drying up, and the vitality is gradually cut off. The people of the moon gradually realize that this planet, their homeland, has gradually died. Although the planet is dead, these moonmen do not want to die like this. In order to fight against the gradually withering surface, the city of Burka was moved underground. The robot technology that has been gradually perfected provides enough labor. These moonmen have enough the confidence to do such a thing. They decided to leave this planet. When the resources that could be mined in the ground had begun to be exhausted, they decided to leave this planet. Although it was the mother planet, the problem now is that it has reached the point where death is the only way to go without leaving. They built a big ship, a very big ship, which gathered all the technology of the country at that time, enough to load the people of the whole city. The destination is the blue planet not far away, and they have already dispatched robots to go there. After inquiring about the information, it is a place with a sea of clouds and strange creatures. The huge ship, carrying the last remnant of this planet, went to the place where the other side of the Sea of Stars is connected, which is an unknown place. The murals come to an abrupt end here, and there is no more content behind, and yes, the story after that is that these moons flew over the blue sea. Of course, it is impossible to draw the follow-up plot. In other words, these moon people are actually the ancestors of the Sky Island people. Maid said, "No wonder we've seen what the captain said about aliens before." Oh, that's great. The musician was very excited to get close to Enel. Is Mr. Enel an alien? That's cool. Who is it? Enel retorted unhappily. But, Captain, how did you know that? How did you know which moons were on Sky Island? The maid asked with narrowed eyes. Yeah, how did I know that? Vlad smiled and didn't mean to answer. Could it be that I saw it when I was reading comics in my previous life? No, Baby 5, you're not right. The chef retorted. What? It's not right there. The maid raised her eyebrows and asked. What's wrong is? The chef sighed slowly. The moon people are indeed the ancestors of the Sky Island people, but not all the moon people have come to the Sky Island. Chapter 222 Buried in the past, the connection between sky and sea. What do you mean? The maid asked, apparently interested in what the chef said. The people of Sky Island are indeed descendants of the moon people, which is easy to see. It is unreasonable to have people on an island suspended at a height of 10,000 meters above the blue sea. But since it's someone who came down from the moon, it makes sense. Chef said, however, the lunar men left on Sky Island are probably only a small number. What? The maid's eyes narrowed. That is, more lunar men have reached the blue sea. Vlad added. Where's the evidence? Enel leaned against the wall with interest and asked, where's the evidence? Captain. Isn't the evidence very simple? Vlad laughed. Don't the Shandians who were brought to Sky Island by the huge soaring currents also have wings? What? The Sandians aren't native to Sky Island? The maid asked in surprise. Yeah, didn't I say that? Vlad said in surprise. Not at all. The maid, who didn't know what to say, pinched the bridge of her nose, looking like she had a headache. Really, I didn't say it. Then let's talk about it. Vlad said slowly, the Shandians have wings, but they didn't originally live on the Sky Island. 400 years ago, the violent soaring ocean currents swept the Jaya Island into the sky, which also took them away. Brought to heaven. They are not native Sky Islanders. That is to say. The maid breathed out a smoke ring softly and said in surprise, actually, the lunar man descended on the blue sea. However, I have never heard of such news. Miss Serena wondered, whether it's a book or a legend circulating on the sea. There is no such thing circulating. Did they really go to the sea? It's definitely here. Chef said solemnly, there is no news on Sky Island about that huge spaceship that can hold the entire city's residents, and its volume has even exceeded the city's huge spaceship, so they definitely descended to the blue sea. Quote. And why there is no news is actually very simple. Vlad said, because they arrived more than 800 years ago, right? Blank 100 years. Maid nodded and agreed, indeed, only reaching the blue sea at that time can block all the news. The so-called blank 100 years is a problem that has been circulating on blue sea for a long time. It refers to the incomplete history in the period from 900 to 800 years ago, and what happened during this period of time. No one knows about it at all, as if it was erased from history artificially. For hundreds of years, countless scholars have gone one after another for this historical gap, but they have not achieved anything, and the gap has not been filled for 100 years. This is also normal. After all, covering this part of history is the master of this world, ruling the world government for 800 years. For 800 years, there have been many pirates and heroes as powerful as the 4 emperors, but Mariajoy, world government is the one who ruled the world. O'Hara 9 years ago was an example. That is to say, about 800 years ago, did the Sky Islanders land on the blue sea in a huge ship? The maid said so. I'm afraid that's it. Vlad smiled and danced with excitement. I can already guess. I can guess how surprised those guys on the sea were at that time. That's what the news was supposed to say at the time. It's like a city, with an amazingly huge spaceship falling from the sky. The sky and the sea. The first intersection. If there is news, it must be written like this. Ah ha ha ha, it's so interesting. Vlad laughed. The lunar man with overwhelming technological power reached the blue sea more than 800 years ago, but it didn't take long for this group to disappear. Only the Shandia people who have been on Jaya Island for hundreds of years have guarded the ruins of Shandola and the historical text, and the people of Sky Island who have been staying on Sky Island and don't know anything. How interesting. What happened in just a few short decades? Vlad laughed. The technological civilization that can easily achieve interstellar travel will die out in just a few decades. The sudden establishment of the world government, the legendary giant kingdom that existed 800 years ago, Fishman the Ark promised by the island 800 years ago, and the battleship Hades built in the capital of Seven Waters 800 years ago, what kind of connection did they have before? What kind of things are hidden in the hidden 100 years? I'm so curious. Vlad laughed loudly. The world is always full of secrets, revealing incomparably attractive directions to lure people. The so-called secret itself is the existence that human beings are constantly searching for. The so-called pirates are not just for such secrets. Out to sea. Yumahaha, that's awesome. Vlad smiled and said, this trip is really worth it. It's so worth it. As Vlad said, this trip to the moon was really worth it. Not only did I get more than 1,000 robots with amazing combat power, but I also got a production line for robot spare parts. I also saw hidden the secrets of more than 800 years, have a deeper understanding of the world. You can write a travel note, it is really cost-effective. So all the secrets are in Laugh Tale, right? Roger. Vlad thought of this, and his eyes were filled with incomparable excitement and excitement. That was the excitement that he wanted to go back to the sea immediately to make a crazy noise. Let's go, little ones, go back. Vlad didn't miss him at all. He turned his head and walked outside the temple. There were still some scars on his face that was injured by Enel before, but his incomparably bright smile was enough to make anyone ignore his scars. I feel it already. The sea is calling me. The smell of tantalizing adventure is rampant. There's no time to carry it around in this place. Vlad laughed loudly. Little ones. Are you ready? The waves of the blue sea are gradually surging. Ha ha. How can even the turbulent waves be? Cook laughed. Our platinum, Drager is very strong. No matter what the wind and waves are, he will not be silenced. It's not nonsense. The maid lit a cigarette for herself. With Mr. Captain, Mr. Cook, Miss Baby5 and Mr. Enel, we are invincible. The boat this god rides is not weak. Enel tilted his head and smiled. Ahaha. Vlad took the lead, then, the Fire Dragon pirates set sail. Chapter 223 That Man. The short trip to the moon of the Fire Dragon pirates came to an end. No one knew that the whole sea was trembling for the birth of the new Shichibukai and the arrest and imprisonment of the great pirate Golden Lion 20 years ago. At that time, there was such a pirate group that had gone to places no one had ever thought of, and obtained a huge harvest that no one could have imagined. The powerful robot corps has no backup robot production line brought back. In addition, the secrets about the blank 100 years that no one knew about 800 years ago are the most rewarding, especially the latter one is that as long as it is released, it will be possible. News that shook the world. But Vlad will not court death. Even Roger, who knows everything, can only choose to give up his life to trigger the era of the great pirate and let more people chase the truth. Vlad knows this now, but he doesn't want to because it's really courting death to face the government like this. While Vlad's gang was packing up on the moon for the return trip, the discussions between the Gorosei, 5 elders and Sengoku continued. What's the point of asking for consent? Sengoku said, it was originally a rude request, that Fire Dragon is too presumptuous. That's right. Phone bug, Gorosei 5 elders, voice was a little distorted, the Fire Dragon wants to see that man, it's too dangerous for the government. That man can already be with him just because of his role alone. The entire marine is comparable, and the scientific troop is only necessary under his leadership. Quote. Although the Fire Dragon claims to have something in his hand that would interest the man, but... So do you simply reject the Fire Dragon? Sengoku said so. He was not surprised at all, it was a normal thing, that man was regarded as the most precious treasure by the government, and was absolutely not allowed to be interfered with by outsiders, even if Gorosei 5 elders said before, that man alone is better than the entire marine. Sengoku didn't mean to refute either. Because this is the truth, marine exists to stabilize the sea, is the government's violent agency, and the existence of that man is the future of the government. Refused. I'm afraid not. On the other side of the phone bug came the somewhat unhappy voice of Gorosei 5 elders. Lord Gorosei 5 elders, what does this mean? Sengoku said solemnly, he knew better than anyone what that man meant to the government to marine. He said that if he lost that man, the government would go crazy and the sea would be turbulent. It means that although we are very opposed, this time I'm afraid we won't be able to stop the Fire Dragon from going to see that man. The Gorosei 5 elders said helplessly. Even the Gorosei 5 elders, who stand at the highest peak of power in the world, are not omnipotent, and they also have their own limitations. What the hell happened? Sengoku realized that, without him knowing, something happened that he didn't know. Tenryubito speaks for that guy again. The Gorosei 5 elders had a cold tone, and although they were already the center of power in the world, Tenryubito was still riding on their heads. What? Sengoku was startled. Anything involving Tenryubito would not be trivial. Did that Fire Dragon ask Tenryubito to speak for him again? What the hell did he do? This is not the first time that Fire Dragon is indeed able to have a relationship with Tenryubito. I don't know, Tenryubito doesn't want us to intervene in their business. What's more troublesome is that the man heard from nowhere that the Fire Dragon wanted to see him. Gorosei 5 elders seems a little tired, he's interested in what the Fire Dragon has to say to interest him. Would love to see it. We can't turn him down. Is that so? Sengoku is also a little powerless. Even the Gorosei 5 elders can't refuse in such a situation, and he naturally has no position to refuse. Needless to say, Tenryubito is naturally the most powerful group of people in the world, and it is also the symbol of the world government's legitimate rule of the world, no matter what. Either the government or marine is just there to serve them. As for that man, although he was a subordinate of the government, he was by no means inferior to the Gorosei 5 elders in terms of status, or it could be said that the Gorosei 5 elders could be replaced, but there was only one man. Just because that man's name is Vegapunk, Dr. Vegapunk, the best scientist in the world, he alone can advance the world's technological level for 500 years, and he is a figure that the government absolutely does not want to lose. So, can you only agree to Fire Dragon's request? Sengoku said so. Maybe that guy from the Fire Dragon joined Shichibukai for this. Gorosei, 5 elders say, damn, what's the purpose of this guy? But now there is no way out. We are also passive in the face of pressure from Tenryubito and Vegapunk at the same time. Sengoku, we can only choose to agree to Fire Dragon's request. But, Sengoku, you know, it's absolutely not allowed to let down your guard on that man and let Borsalino pass by. Keep an eye on him. Got it. Dash 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 dash. When Vlad received a call from Sengoku, it was already time for the Platinum Drager to break into the atmosphere, and the sea that had not left for a long time was still clear and attractive from a high altitude. The phone bug that Sengoku called Vlad was Shichibukai's dedicated contact phone bug, a product of the Marine Science Corps, and the quality was guaranteed. Even if Vlad was at a high altitude near space, he could clearly communicate with Sengoku. Mosamoshi, is that Marshal Sengoku? Vlad smiled. Pirate, I don't care what you do, as long as you remember, don't try to fool Marine. Sengoku held a sigh of relief. The whole government and Marine were being played around by this guy, and the highest authority that rules the world and the strongest violent institution in the sea was actually being played by a pirate. Sengoku wants to hit people now. Well, don't be so heartless, Mr. Sengoku. Vlad smiled, I'm also Shichibukai now, I'm on the side of the government and Marine. We're a team. You should keep these words to deceive ghosts. Sengoku is a man in his 70s. Of course, he doesn't believe Vlad's nonsense. He deliberately became Shichibukai, and immediately made such a request. No matter how you look at Vlad's actions, it is too purposeful. So, the government has complied with my request, hasn't it? Vlad didn't care about Sengoku's anger, so what if he was angry? Can Sengoku still say no to the government, to Tenryubito? Do not make jokes. A month later, North Blue Brand Island Marine Base. It's there. Sengoku said so. North Blue. I just want to visit North Blue too. Vlad smiled, no problem. Chapter 224 North Blue Wave Kuro Island. North Blue, one of the 4 seas, is located on the outer side of the New World, separated from the New World by a windless belt, and separated from the East Blue by the towering red soil continent. X23 US. Com updates fastest. North Blue is the destination of the Dragon Pirates. After sending some goings to Tenryubito through Tesoro, Vlad got the government to agree to his request. For Vegapunk, Vlad wanted to meet him a long time ago. That man is really unusual. And North Blue is where Vlad and the government agreed to meet. Speaking of which, Tenryubito is really a good group of people. It was thanks to their help that they became Shichibukai before. Vlad felt a little embarrassed when he thought of burning down their house before. When the Fire Dragon pirates came down from the moon before, the place they arrived at was still the paradise in the first half of the Great Route. For a normal pirate group, they wanted to cross the upside-down mountain in a month's time and pass through nowhere. Getting the wind belt to North Blue is a really tough thing to do. But for the Fire Dragon pirates who own the flying pirate ship Platinum Drag, such worries are completely unnecessary. The Great Route of Danger. The windless zone of a sea king's lair. For ordinary people, it is like a place of death, but for the Fire Dragon pirates, it is really easy to get through. Being able to fly is really a very cheating thing, and this applies no matter where it is placed. Platinum Drag. It took only 10 days for Vlad and his group to reach North Blue from the Great Route, and it was still 20 days away from the agreed month. Rad didn't want to take it with him on that Blender Island. That was Marine's largest base in North Blue. Vlad would not be uncomfortable anywhere. Even if his current identity is Shichibukai, it should be considered Marine. He is his own person, but in fact, such a thing only needs to be said. Vlad did not expect Marine to greet him because of this relationship. As long as you arrive at the appointed time, Vlad decided to take a good stroll in North Blue before the appointed time. Maybe you can find a few potential crew members. Now the ship is not empty. Hundreds of robots have a sense of existence, but they are not alive after all. Now the total number of Fire Dragon pirates is 5. As a Shichibukai-level pirate group, it is really enough. Pokuro Island is a well-known island in North Blue, but it is not famous as a tourist island. In fact, this island is a fishing city. The specialty of this island is a very delicious fish. Is the fish named after the island, called Pokuro fish. This kind of fish is extremely delicious. All the fish found so far are difficult to compare with it. The meat quality is extremely delicious. Even an ordinary person who can't cook casually boils it with water, and he will get a rare delicacy. There is no doubt that it is a precious ingredient that all chefs around the world dream of, and a delicious delicacy that all food lovers never want to miss. However, Pokuro fish is a very special fish. The only living place that has been discovered so far is the deep sea near Pokuro Island. Perhaps in the legendary sea area, the magical sea all blue with all the fish in the world, there will still be such fish, but that is just a legend after all, otherwise the Pokuro fish would not be named after the island. This kind of fish lives in the deep sea and does not easily come to the shallow sea. It is really difficult to catch them. In fact, before the new fishing techniques were invented on Pokuro Island more than 10 years ago, this kind of fish was even available all over the world. It is rare to see it in the market of China, and even the nobles such as Tenryubito can hardly taste such deliciousness. Precisely because of its rarity, it is so precious that the price of Pokuro fish once reached a sky-high level, and the sporadic catch simply cannot keep up with the huge market demand. Although there are such cherished resources, Pokuro Island is not very famous, because the output is too small, and many times there is no record of even a single capture for 1 or 2 years. This was the case until more than 10 years ago, when a new capture technology was invented, and the technology that could easily attract the kuro fish living in the deep sea to the surface was finally invented. Production went up immediately. That is to say, from this time on, the world finally realized that this place still has such unparalleled delicacies. Soon, merchants came in droves, and merchant ships began to gather here. Originally a remote and backward small fishing village has gradually developed into a prosperous marine city. With Pokuro fish as its flagship product, the fame of the fishing city named Pokuro began to resound in North Blue. Wow, what a lush city! Vlad sighed so much. This city feels like a city on the water, and it is not the same as the capital of Seven Waters, which is also a city on the water. The capital of Seven Waters is due to the impact of the huge tsunami, and the foundation is constantly sinking. Helplessly became a water city, but this island is different. A port is a city. The city itself is a huge port, the prosperous city is spreading within the huge bay, and the waterways extending in all directions pass through the city. There are no roads that can be walked directly in this city, but only wide waterways for large ships to pass through. Vlad noticed that there was a small boat docked outside many houses in the city. It was not big, and it was probably similar to the boat that the Fire Dragon pirates took when they first sailed from Sabayati land. The boats are all draped with fishing nets and the like. There is no doubt that these boats are fishing boats. Just as Vlad was going around a lot, there were still a lot of small boats sailing back to the port and docked outside the house. That was the return of the fishermen. This city is really interesting. Sighed while standing on his own platinum. Drager, is it a city built entirely on the sea? Or should it be called a port? Fishing has really been carved into the bones. Yeah, this island is really different. The chef standing behind Vlad said excitedly, I've heard its name since I was a kid. So, chef, is that so-called Pokuro fish really that tasty? Vlad turned his head and said, we came all the way to eat a bite of fish after listening to your suggestion. Unbelievably delicious. Quote. Trace of memory appeared on the chef's face, I've eaten it once, and it's a delicious food that can make people forget all troubles. Ah ha ha ha, is that so? What are you waiting for? Vlad said with a smile, quickly find one to try. It's not that easy. Chef said with a wry smile, even with the technology that can capture it, the output is still not high. It is already a bumper harvest to be able to produce 2 or 3 pieces every day. Vlad raised an eyebrow. That is this time. Caught. Po-kuro fish caught. Such a shout came from a boat on one side. Chapter 225 Strange Man. Caught po-kuro fish. Quote. A very excited voice, with a somewhat guilty voice, came from a fishing boat that was approaching. Shouting loudly was a man standing on the bow, looking a little thin, dark-skinned. It fits the image of a fisherman at sea. Vlad's expression was like this. Exclamation mark. Nary summation. No, Chef's expression is like this. Embarrassing, super embarrassing, isn't it hard to come by? Isn't it already said that 2 or 3 crops a day is already a bumper harvest? How did you just come across one? Not to mention the embarrassing situation on this side of the Fire Dragon pirates. On the other side, since the fisherman on that boat shouted that sentence, the nearby sea area instantly fell into an indescribable silence. Platinum, Drager, Vlad standing on the bow could easily see the performance of the people on the surrounding ships. It can be roughly divided into 2 categories. One is surprised, and then immediately turns into an ecstatic expression. These people are generally well dressed and the boats are tall and sturdy. At a glance, they can tell that they are businessmen who came to this city to buy. The other type of clothing is similar to the fishermen, with dark skin and a little thin body. They have a confused expression, and then they immediately have a look of horror on their faces, as if they have seen something extraordinary. After the same brief period of days, the 2 types of people had 2 completely different reactions. People like businessmen quickly drove their boats and approached the fishing boat. People dressed as fishermen immediately dispersed. He drove his own boat into the well-connected waterways of this port city. The boats were intertwined, and there was confusion on the wide water for a while. Hey, it seems that this city also has very interesting things. Vlad laughed. Captain, why don't you come and have a look? The chef forcibly relieved the awkward atmosphere and chuckled. I'm still stunned. I'm very interested in the legendary po-kuro fish. Didn't you say that in the past it was a super delicious taste that even Tenryubito rarely tasted? Vlad gave the chef a sidelong glance, and did not intend to continue joking with the chef. He jumped directly off the huge platinum, Drager. This big ship is very good. Yes, but the problem is that this ship is in this kind of place can't be used. In this place where there are ships on the sea, a big ship like the Platinum, Drager is a bit bad. Hey, maid, please keep an eye on the boat. With such a sound, Vlad had landed on a small boat, very small, even smaller than those fishing boats. Followed by a chef named Dino, who followed Vlad's footsteps and fell directly behind Vlad. Oh, sorry, this friend. Vlad turned his head and said to the owner of the boat, my boat is a little too big, and I can't use it here, so it's okay to take your boat, right? Then Vlad was a little surprised. The owner of this ship didn't seem to be any of the 2 types of people before, but he was more conspicuous than any of them. He is a very tall man. Although he is sitting on a boat, his height is close to that of a standing chef. If he stands up, he may be about 3 meters tall, which is considered a taller crowd in the sea where freaks are born. A long black curly hair was scattered on the back and chest in a mess, and there were some strange things mixed with it, such as rice grains, oil stains and even paint. He is wearing a white coat. Let's call it a white coat first, although the style can be vaguely seen that it is indeed a white coat, but the color is completely invisible. It is a bit underestimated to say that it is colorful, like a rainbow. The colors are mixed together, and it is already dirty and can't see the original. This man looked like he was in his 30s. He stared blankly at Vlad. Vlad was a little unsure. Although the man's eyes were indeed looking at him, there was nothing in his eyes. He was in a good mood, and his mouth kept opening and closing, and he could vaguely hear what he was murmuring. He didn't pay attention to Vlad, didn't pay any attention to Vlad at all. The man just sat there blankly, not caring that the 2 of Vlad invaded his ship. Hello. Vlad finally made sure that although his eyes were indeed directed towards this side, his attention had completely disappeared. Hey, this old man. Vlad shook his hand in front of this man. There was no response at all. I'm going, what's the situation? Vlad is a little unsure. What is the situation of this person? Completely do not understand. Hey, did you hear that? Vlad took a breath and shouted loudly. Hey. Finally, this time the man finally reacted. His body trembled visibly, and his eyes finally became smart. Looking at Vlad, his eyes instantly panicked, but immediately, the man calmed down. Well, okay. This man was sitting very straight, his eyes were calm, and he looked very graceful. Oh shit, did you hear me just now? Vlad was speechless. What happened to this man? Oh, sorry, I was wrong, I lost my mind. After apologizing, he apologized very decisively. The man did not hesitate at all, and immediately bowed his head and apologized. You man. Vlad smiled, showing some interest. How interesting. Ahahaha. The face was flushed and flushed, even the stained face could see the flushing color. I really understand, this man. That was the thought that came to both Vlad and the chef at this time. By the way, are you? The man didn't notice that there were two more people on his boat until this time. Oh, we're going to see the legendary Po-Kuro fish. Want to ride your boat? Vlad said so. Then. Po-Kuro fish. The man's eyes gradually became empty, and his thoughts did not know where to go. Vlad tilted his head, a little lost. Okay, Captain, let's go first. The chef looks a little bit dumbfounded. This place is really amazing, it's so strange to meet anyone at random. Okay, leave this guy alone. Vlad looked at the man who had been stunned again and said, let's go straight over. The cook consciously walked to the oar at the stern, swayed the oar gently, and the boat began to move. It wasn't too far away, and soon the small boat that Vlad and the two were on had gathered with the merchants who came to buy fish. Everyone had a tacit understanding and did not approach the boat. There were close to 100 boats. The boats formed a circle, and the boat that was going to sell fish was in the middle, and China was still vacant at a distance not too far. So Vlad saw the legendary fish, the Po-Kuro fish. It was a big fish, about 5 meters long, hanging on the mast of the fishing boat. The light of the fish is long and the fish scales look very delicate. The head of the fish is very large, which is out of proportion to the body. It seems that there are no eyes. What impressed Vlad the most was the sharp teeth in the fish's mouth. You know how hard it is to capture it. Awesome. This fish. Vlad smiled, his Adam's apple rising and falling. Chapter 226 Fisheries United. There is a smell in the air. It smells very good, just like the smell of the sea. It is very delicious. Just smelling it will make people feel relaxed and happy. As soon as this smell came out, it suppressed the fishy smell that had been indiscriminately permeating the previous fishing city. It was an overwhelming smell. Even the fishy smell that had been accumulated for more than 10 years was vulnerable to such a smell. Hey, this taste, is this the taste of that Po-Kuro fish? Vlad licked his lips and smiled. It's amazing, isn't it? Is this still fish? Does fish have such a smell? It's not dead yet. It has such a smell without any cooking. I can understand why countless merchants are willing to stay here for several years, just to buy a Kuro fish. It's nothing. Standing behind Vlad, the chef stared fascinated at the big fish on the fishing boat not far away that was barely struggling, and said, this is just a little special thing about the Kuro fish, the most powerful one. Yes, even if the person who doesn't know the most about cooking, just cuts it with a knife and eats it directly, the taste is already superior to that of most fish. Even by simply cooking it, the flavors it produces can already make one get carried away. Chef said, it is indeed a well-deserved dream-like ingredient. Woo-ha-ha. Vlad laughed, it really does look like this. Well, this fish. We are bound to win. dash 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 dash. Everyone. Standing on the bow of the fishing boat was the fisherman who shouted that he had caught the kuro fish before, and now Vlad could clearly see the man's appearance as he got closer. Very thin, really thin, with a skinny appearance on his exposed face, empty eyes, dark skin, but a strangely pale complexion. The fisherman shouted, "Have seen it. This is a real kuro fish. If you want to buy it, please make an offer." Vlad could see that the fisherman looked panicked, and his tone was trembling, as if he was afraid of something. "How do we know if this fish of yours is a problem?" After a brief silence, the merchants who had rushed over like sharks smelling blood were not in a hurry to bid at all. They seemed a little hesitant, and finally someone asked. "All the previous kuro fish were sold by the Kuro Island Fishing Company, right? We can only rest assured that such a large transaction has a guarantee like that. Now you can sell it yourself. We don't know if there will be any problems here." Vlad noticed that when the businessman opened his mouth, all the businessmen around were nodding in agreement, agreeing with the businessman's opinion. "Yeah, it looks like that fishing company is very popular." Vlad laughed. The honest fisherman looked a little panicked and didn't know how to answer the businessman's words. "Are you speechless?" Seeing this situation, the businessman seemed to have confirmed his guess. "Then there is really a problem, right? Sure enough, kuro fish is exclusively sold by Kuro Fishing Company, and you sell it yourself. There is a problem." No. The fisherman's face flushed red, and after holding it for a long time, he finally said dryly, "This fish was just caught. No problem." "No problem, so why not let kuro sell for you? Wouldn't that be more secure?" A businessman said this. That. The fisherman was speechless again, and there was deep fear in his eyes. "Let's go. There's something wrong with this fish." A businessman said so. It's gone. Immediately responders gather. These guys are so interesting. Vlad said with a smile, although he said he was about to leave, but in fact these businessmen had no intention of leaving at all, and the old god was still there, with a cruel smile on his mouth, waiting for the honest fisherman. "Lower the price yourself." As they said themselves, there is really no guarantee that the transaction without the Kuro Fishing Company, but this insecurity is not for these merchants, but for those weak fishermen. "Hey chef, can you tell if there's something wrong with that fish?" Vlad turned his head and asked. "On the outside, there's nothing wrong with it. It's fresh, it's just caught from the sea." The chef carefully observed the fish for a while from a distance, and confirmed that as a chef, this can still be done. "Really? That's all right." Vlad smiled. "By the way, what is the market price of a wave of kuro?" "Market price?" Cook replied, "That's a real price. A bar of this size. 10 million Baileys." 10 million. Vlad raised his eyebrows. This price is really not low. Yeah, otherwise these businessmen wouldn't be able to make things difficult for him now. The chef agreed that 10 million Baileys was too much for a fish, no doubt. "Hey, that old man!" Vlad shouted, "I bought this fish. How about 10 million? Each." The fisherman obviously didn't come back to his senses, and turned his head to look at Vlad in confusion. "Is it enough? 10 million Baileys, is that what the market price is?" 10 million may be a huge sum of money for ordinary people, but for Vlad it is just a drop in the bucket. The dragon pirates who have obtained the legacy of the ancient city of Shandora can be said to be extremely rich. Vlad also has a local tyrant friend in the New World. It is impossible to lack money. Spending 10 million to buy a fish is really just a pastime for Ferdinando Vlad. "Sir, are you serious?" On a boat next to Vlad, a well-dressed businessman said in surprise. "That fish has no guarantee." Businessman said, "It's a full 10 million. If there is any problem, isn't it a big loss?" Huh. Vlad raised his eyebrows and said disdainfully, "Rich and willful, I want you to take care of it." Quote. The The man was so choked that he couldn't speak. That gentleman, are you serious? The fisherman said excitedly, his eyes flashing with excitement. That's when. The moment Vlad was answering. No, this transaction is not allowed. Some sharp male voices came from one side. Chapter 227 Man following. Vlad turned his head to the side in annoyance. In the direction of the sound, a ship was coming fast. On the bow of the ship stood a man in a black suit, a little tall and thin with a face. He also wore a pair of sunglasses, with his hands around his chest, looking a little reckless. Kuro Fishing Company were printed on the body of the not-so-big boat. It looked very arrogant and domineering. No one dared to stop it all the way. Without any doubts, the ownership of this boat is the so-called fishing company of this Kuro Island. Vlad noticed that when the boat appeared, the fisherman's face became pale to the naked eye, as if the time had come for some kind of beast, and when it was obvious, fear suddenly covered his face. It's still interesting. Vlad smiled. This Wave Kuro Fishing Company seems to have a problem. Cook smiled and said, why, does Mr. Captain want to take a step? Think too much. Vlad said without turning his head, exploitation is everywhere, and this is the rule of this island. Do you want me to go over the shady scene on this island for a group of strangers I don't know? Ah, forget it, please forgive me for such a thing. It's their own business to fight for their rights. Vlad said, I'm just a fish buyer, I'm not a hero, I just want to eat fish now. Ha ha. The chef smiled and was not surprised by Vlad's words. Vlad is not a helpful person. He will only do what he is interested in. This is something that the chef has determined from a long time ago. No, this transaction can't be done. The ship quickly approached the vicinity. The man with the sunglasses said so in a cold tone. Although his head was facing Vlad, Vlad could feel that the guy's eyes under the sunglasses were looking at the guy. A fisherman who sells fish. It's Mr. John from Kuro Fishing Company. Is it actually such a high-level person who came here? I heard that the top management of Kuro Fishing Company are all powerful monsters. To let such a guy come here, it seems that the company attaches great importance to this matter. It's normal, after all, such an incident is too bad. Merchants talked a lot. Kuro fish is the leading product of Kuro Island. If something goes wrong, the island will be finished. There is no guarantee for private transactions. If there is a problem, who will be responsible? Sir, I'm sorry. Black sunglasses, it seems that the man named John said to Vlad, this transaction can't go on. Kuro fish is too precious, and private transactions are not allowed on this island. His tone was calm and well-founded, and seemed to be very reasonable, but Vlad could easily feel that the man's tone was condescending, as if he really regarded himself as a character. Very annoying. This kind of guy who has no self-knowledge is very annoying. Huh. Vlad was very exaggerated and said with a smile, are you blocking my decision? No, it's just that private transactions are very risky. After all, no one knows if there is anything wrong with that fish. We can't let the reputation of this island be threatened at all. John said so. Not far away, the fisherman selling fish was pale, and Zan was speechless. So please understand, sir. John smiled, if you want to buy Kuro fish, you can buy it from our Kuro Fishing Company, the same price, but more guaranteed. Really, sounds great. Vlad smiled. Yes. John smiled too. But Lao Su is a very troublesome person, so. Vlad turned his head and shouted to the fisherman who was already scared, hey, brother, 10 million, are you going to sell it? Ah. The fisherman didn't know what to say, and looked a little confused. You. Although John is wearing sunglasses, he can still clearly see the anger that flashed across the man's face. People in high positions always don't like to be ignored. Such things are common no matter where they are. What? Vlad smiled and said, I don't care about the risks myself. I don't care, do you still want to stop me from trading? Quote. No, this gentleman, It seems that you haven't understood what I mean. I mean, even if you don't care about possible losses, such a risk is something we can't bear. John forced a smile. That's right. Ah, did I not understand or did you not understand? Vlad replied, I mean, who cares about you? What will you do to me? That's enough. I'm just here to buy fish. This gentleman. John's voice froze suddenly. Do you mean to fight against our Bokuro fishing company? For the enemy. Vlad smiled. Bang. The shadow instantly appeared on the boat of the fishing company, and kicked the man named John out. For the enemy. The man said, just because you want to talk to us about being an enemy is a bit too arrogant. Hey, chef, when are you so passionate? Vlad smiled. One who jumped over and kicked John was naturally not someone else, of course, the chef who had been following Vlad's back and didn't speak. Well, nothing, just think we've been insulted. The chef replied. Ah ha ha ha. Yes, it's just like this. Vlad smiled, this is my buddy. Kicked away. That legendary monster, Mr. John, was caught. You were kicked away without any resistance. The businessmen around were talking, who are these two guys? Okay. The cook jumped back into the boat and rowed the boat towards the fisherman selling fish on his own, ignoring the comments of the people around him. The transaction was successful very quickly. The money was directly put into the hands of the fisherman who had been stunned, and the big fish was placed on his own boat from the mast. Vlad and the chef set off on their return journey. Dash 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 dash. Wow, is this the legendary Pokuro fish, one of the top delicacies in the sea? Miss Musician looked at the fish on the deck in awe. It looks amazing. Yes, this is a gift from the sea. The curly-haired man said, one of the most treasured fish in the world. Ah ha ha ha. Vlad laughed, then let's cook and eat. By the way, why are you here? Only then did Vlad notice that this curly-haired man had actually sneaked into his boat. Chapter 228 Two Men. Hey, don't you know me? Miss Musician looked a little surprised. Seeing that the curly-haired man naturally followed behind her own captain on the boat, she thought this man was a guest brought back by the captain, but did she not know him at all? I'm so sorry, I want to see this fish. The curly-haired man apologized naturally. It sounded a bit sincere, but his eyes didn't even move away from the fish on the deck for a moment, as if it was the iron sand that stuck to it like a magnet. X23 US. Com updates fastest. Hey, I said, since you know it's unauthorized, then let me down quickly. How delicious this legendary Bokuro fish is, and he doesn't want to mess around with this guy at all. But there was no answer. The curly-haired man didn't pay any attention to Vlad at all, and Zanzan stretched his hand towards the big fish placed on the deck. Hey, are you listening to me? Vlad rubbed his forehead, a little helpless. Huh. The curly-haired man was agitated and came back to his senses in an instant, and turned his head to look at Vlad's eyes that instantly became calm. Well, okay. The man said so. What a shit. What did you hear? Just give it to me. Vlad has never felt this way before, only others have complained about him, and he has never complained about anything else. This guy is a formidable enemy. Vlad thought so. Sorry, I didn't hear you. Very skilled. This man's behavior of apologizing is unusually skilled, bending over to apologize in one go, even with a bit of inexplicable handsomeness. Okay, I'm not in the mood to play with you anymore. Vlad said, although I don't know who you are, but I'm not interested in knowing, please get off the boat and don't force me to use force. The man looked surprised, do you want me to get off the boat? Bullshit. This ship is mine, do you want to stay here forever? Vlad was angry. Huh, am I not on my own boat? The curly-haired man looked like he had just woken up from a dream. He looked around and found that he was indeed on a big ship he didn't know. Oh, sorry for the trouble. The man stood up straight and apologized sincerely again. I'm so sorry, I'll leave right away. After that, the man really turned his head and left, and got off the boat on his own, without caring about the fire dragon pirates who had been watching him all the time. This guy. Vlad raised his eyebrows and said strangely, have you been living in your own world? What a freak. Enel, who was sitting next to the cabin, yawned and said so. I don't think you're in a position to say that. The maid flicked the soot and ruthlessly complained. Longya number 1 number 2. Quote. Vlad exclaimed, come and move this fish into the kitchen. There's a feast tonight. Yes, Lord Fire Dragon. Hearing Vlad's words, 2 small figures appeared on the deck, and 2 small robots walked up to the big fish and carried the big fish into the cabin following Vlad's instructions. Hey, these dragon-tooth soldiers are really useful. Vlad squeezed his chin. Don't make up your name, okay? Enel Vivi raised his eyelids and said, they are my god's guard. Huh. Vlad immediately retorted, even you are a member of my dragon army, okay. Can they be an exception? Cut. Enel snorted disdainfully. Well. Enel and Vlad frowned almost at the same time, then stretched out at the same time. Dash 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 dash. Master Jack. A tall, thin man with a bruised nose and wet clothes stood cautiously behind the other man. The man he called Jack was a short man, looking a little thin, with almost white hair and a messy face. With a sarcastic smile. That's the boat. The man who bought the fish from that idiot and attacked me is on that boat. The man who was directly kicked by the chef for preventing Vlad and the 2 from buying po-kuro fish, John called his parents. Really? The man named Jack said in an unwavering tone, by the way, how did you deal with that idiot? Because it's been a long time since I've had such a guy. Insatiable guy. John said, so I let him go fishing with the other fishermen, and it's his last contribution to Po-Kuro Island. Well, that's fine. The man named Jack said, such an example cannot be opened. Whether it is the island or the Kuro fish must be in our hands, otherwise, the gentleman will not be happy. Yes. Mentioning that gentleman, the terrifying president of the Po-Kuro Fishing Company, the man named John shuddered and looked terrified. That's good, then, the rest is this bunch of guys who ignore our rules. The eyes of the man named Jack gradually widened, and his voice became smaller and smaller. Master Jack. John is a little weird. That flag. Jack murmured, why are these guys here? Lord Jack, what's wrong? John was a little confused. No, I have to go back and discuss with the president right away. Anyway, it's too strange for a Shichibukai to suddenly appear. The man named Jack whispered, and then turned his head to look at John meaningfully, making the man who had been soaking in the water for a long time bewildered. Well. Then, Jack saw a familiar figure, Paso. What is that guy doing on the fire dragon's boat? Damn, what happened? Dash 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 dash. Night has come, and the big ship of the fire dragon pirates is docked on the shore, some distance from the lush port city. After all, this city is very strange. The bay is full of buildings, but there is nothing on the island. The fire dragon pirates are having a banquet, and the atmosphere is very high. This taste is really good. No matter how much you eat, you won't get tired of it. Vlad held a piece of grilled fish in his hand, with a fascinated expression on his face, is this kind of taste really something that humans can eat? Indeed. Enel laughed and ate, this is indeed food worthy of the identity of the god. Woo. The musician lady, whose mouth was full of fish, danced and didn't know what to say. It's really delicious, the chef's craftsmanship is good. The maid said so. Haha, these ingredients are all amazing. The chef is somewhat modest. Well. Enel suddenly stopped eating and looked aside in surprise. Hey, Captain, something interesting seems to be happening over there. Enel said so. Frederick ignored him, stuffed something into his own mouth and said, fuck him. I don't want to meddle in my own business now. Just not far from the platinum, Drager, two men were facing each other. Chapter 229 Lineage. In the open space on the island not far from the ship of the Fire Dragon pirates, two people stood opposite each other. Kuro Fishing Company, who had been spying on the Fire Dragons in the dark before, but after recognizing Vlad's identity, he decided to go back and have a good discussion with his boss. There is also a strange person who just got off Vlad's boat before, a guy with long black curly hair and a white coat, whose name is Paso. Oh yo, isn't this Paso? The man named Jack smiled meaningfully, with complete malice on his face. Quote. The man named Paso didn't speak, he didn't know what he was thinking, and he didn't respond at all. Hey, are you listening to me? Seeing that Paso didn't reply for a long time, Jack shouted angrily, Bastard, can't you listen to people well? Huh, oh, sorry. Paso felt like waking up from a dream, and quickly apologized, I did something wrong, I shouldn't ignore you. Oh, it's okay, it's not a big. The man named Jack cooperated to accept Paso's apology, with a smile on his face, scratching the back of his head with his hands, and he looked very generous, and he couldn't see the gloom before. Do you think I'm talking cross-talk with you? Bang! The small man Jack, who was still smiling at first, successfully changed his face again in just an instant. A full and ferocious look hung on his cheeks. The short body was as swift as a cheetah. The heavy kick directly hit Paso, who was much taller than him, in the stomach. The tall man was kicked flying by the foot of the man who was far shorter than him, and he fell heavily to the ground. PFF'd. Despite his tall physique, the man who was not considered a strong body spit out a mouthful of blood. This also made him completely awake, and the thoughts that were completely empty are now condensed again. Why am I here? Didn't I want to ask the gentleman for some Kuro fish flesh? Crack. Paso slapped his forehead and said angrily, Have you forgotten again? Oh. Then he finally noticed Jack standing in front of him, and his tone was inexplicable, It's you, Jack. Ha, yeah, long time no see, I don't want to meet you if I don't have to. Paso, I'm so upset about your stinky problems at all times. Jack said, I really can't figure it out, why did that dead old man value you so much? Quote. The man named Paso was speechless, and Vivi narrowed his eyes, wondering what he was thinking. Hey, have you lost your mind again? Jack tilted his head and said a little unhappily. Clap. Paso stood up, patted the dust on his body, and said, Not this time. In fact, I can't figure it out. Obviously I'm a stupid guy, but why does the teacher treat me differently? Ha, what else could be the reason? Of course, because the old man is blind. Jack's expression was extremely distorted, and he laughed wildly. Anyone with eyes can see that I'm better than you, right? But the old man can't see, doesn't that mean he's blind? Shut up. Paso's expression was extremely serious, he is also your teacher. Teacher, ha. Jack laughed, it's like he stopped treating me as a disciple, and I stopped treating him as a teacher for a long time. Don't push me, Jack. Paso said, I don't want to fight with you. Do it. Hey, that's fun. Jack laughed, when did you beat me in a fight? By the way, Paso, you got off the dragon's boat today because you want to get the flesh and blood of Kuro fish. Jack grinned and smiled, really, I haven't given up. Do you really want to develop a better bait? Ha, isn't it? Isn't the current bait something that your respected teacher developed himself? What, is it you who turned out to be negative? It's never been denied. Paso said, the teacher was working on improving the original bait until he died. This is the teacher's wish, and I will definitely follow it. Isn't the current bait very good? It's very useful. Haven't you seen it already? How did this dilapidated fishing village develop to such a scale in more than 10 years? Isn't it all thanks to that bait? Jack laughed, why change him? Yeah, the development of Kuro is inseparable from the bait invented by the teacher, but... Paso said, that bait cost too much, Jack, you know, if things go on like this, maybe the Pokuro people will be wiped out. It's their own volition. No one wants you to continue your research, not even those fishermen. Money, who doesn't want it? Jack laughed. What's the price to pay? But it would be better if there were better bait. Passo said seriously. If you say. Jack lowered his eyelids. I won't allow it. It's my business. Passo said so. Huh, I really can't tell. I didn't want to care about you. Jack leisurely took out another injection from the pocket of his clothes and said with a smile, but now is not the time to let you mess around. There are amazing people on the island. I can only make you quieter. Now. That's. Passo's eyes widened suddenly. Hey, you know, Passo. Jack stabbed a needle in his neck with a smile, and said, that old thing can be used for more than just making bait. This kind of thing can also be done. Ha, it's really amazing. Although I hate that old man, I have to say that this kind of technology is really amazing. Jack's body began to rise sharply, the muscles on his slender body began to bulge, his nostrils became larger, his eyes began to bulge, and his voice became extremely loud, the power that can change the bloodline. What should this be called? The bloodline factor. Is it? Well, forget it, forget it. This is the power of the bull. With a height comparable to that of Passo, Jack, who was originally short, suddenly grew taller, and an extremely majestic guy like a monster appeared in front of Passo. Although he says he hates teachers, has the research on the teacher's legacy reached such a level? The last scene Passo saw was a huge shadow rushing towards him, and what followed was heart-piercing pain. Chapter 230 Fondant. Pain, unprecedented pain. Every corner of the body is twitching, it feels like every bone in the body has been smashed fiercely, such pain has never been experienced before. Yet Tilda isn't dead yet. What a tenacious vitality. Hearing such a voice indistinctly, he barely opened his eyes. He was hit by a heavy punch, so his severely congested eyes couldn't see anything at all. Only vaguely saw two people's silhouettes, and couldn't see their faces at all. It looks like, I just know that there are really two people here. Although his body was almost immobile, he stretched out his hand, a power spontaneously born from the bottom of his heart. Save me, I still can't die. I still can't die. Consciousness was cut off again. Dash 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 dash. Captain, what are you doing? Enel watched in amazement as his captain picked up the bloody guy who fell to the ground and asked, didn't he agree to ignore the affairs of this island? What's the situation now? This guy obviously has a grudge with the so-called senior management of the fishing company just now, right? Isn't picking this guy back now and getting into trouble right away? Well, such a guy can't just watch him die like this. Vlad said so. His eyes were looking at his legs. There was a hand, although the owner of the hand was already unconscious, but the hand was holding his pants tightly and never let go. It looks like this guy doesn't want to die yet. Since he doesn't want to die, I'll give him a chance. Vlad laughed, and, I'm curious, what lineage factor is that? I'm really curious. What is a lineage factor? Although Vlad is not very clear, he also knows such a concept. Let's just say that the few transformed people of the Germa family were created based on this theory. There is no doubt that such a thing is an important secret hidden behind the world, and it is false that Vlad is not interested in being able to see it in such a place. Plus, he's still quite interested in this guy lying on the ground, so saving this guy is not a matter of the past. Dash 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 dash. Me. Chaos's consciousness gradually became clear, and the pain in the whole body subsided slightly, but it was still unbearable pain. Am I still alive? The man said this in a hoarse voice, as if he was rejoicing. Oh Tilda, have you woken up yet? The man named Passo heard the voice coming from the side, and turned his head with some difficulty. Although it was the most unbearable pain to move, this man turned his head without hesitation. Don't care about physical pain. Oh, it's you, former gentleman. The man said so, Every time he moved his mouth, he could clearly see his face twitching, and the pain was haunting him like a devil. Yes, but you are really strong. Vlad exclaimed, it doesn't look like a person, so can you talk to me casually? If you scream because of a little pain. This man actually showed a difficult smile, that's too ugly. Really? Ah ha ha ha. Vlad laughed, you're such a funny guy. I think so too. Paso replied. Thank you so much. Paso said, thank you for saving my life. No, it's all your own and you don't want to die. Vlad smiled and said, we don't have any professional ship doctors on board. All we do is to help you bring back the dislocated bones and bandage the trauma. Now you are not out of danger. It doesn't matter, it's enough for now. Paso smiled and said, can you do me one more favor? Hey, all right, tell me. Vlad smiled. Just a small request. Paso's eyes glanced at his chest. It's very simple, can you please help me take out the things on my chest? Oh, what's the important thing? Okay. Vlad stretched out his hand, and then took out a transparent glass bottle from Paso's chest, which contained colorful things that looked like fudge. Yeah, what is this? Vlad asked curiously. Just a trivial little invention. Was a wry smile on Paso's face, and he said, I didn't have time to take it out before, but now I can use it. Please bring me a yellow fudge. Really fudge? Vlad smiled, opened the lid of the bottle according to the words, and picked out a khaki fudge from the inside, exuding a thick sweet fragrance. Vlad's eyes were a little surprised. Laughing. It seems that he noticed that Vlad's eyes are very strange, and Paso said a little embarrassedly, I often don't eat on time during the research, so I prepared some sweets to replenish energy. No. Vlad's eyes seemed to reflect, you guy, awesome. It's the first time someone says that. Paso looked a little embarrassed. And then is it to feed you? Vlad suppressed his craving and fed the khaki fudge to Paso's mouth. Thanks. With a thankful nod, Paso swallowed the gummy in one bite, chewing with an expression of enjoyment on his face. Vlad was very satisfied with this guy. Then the thing that stunned Vlad happened. As the gummy was swallowed by Paso, amazing changes began to appear in Paso's body. Almost visible to the naked eye, Paso's injuries began to recover, the external wounds began to scab, they began to fall off quickly, and the twisted body began to recover. This is... Vlad's eyes widened, completely unable to understand what was going on in front of him. Hey, can something like this be considered a gizmo? No matter how you look at it, it's amazing, isn't it? Don't blame Vlad for making a fuss, such a thing is amazing that Vlad has never seen before, such a thing is not something that can be explained simply by medicine. Perhaps, it has to be described as a devil fruit. Maybe Darrow's Rose's Lilliputian princess, Mancheri's fruit ability can reach such a level. It's okay, it's all based on the teacher's theory. After a while, Paso was able to sit up, and the injury on his body was almost healed, but his face was extra pale. Although the recovery is very fast, the consumption is not covered. Paso said, Sir, I can. No problem, enough food. Vlad's eyes seem to be shining, but I have some questions to ask you. Mobile phone users, please visit Reading, a better reading experience. Chapter 231 Bloodbait Behind the Wave Kuro. Hiccup tilde. No, I can't eat anymore. Paso, with a round belly, slumped on the chair, hiccuping, and waving his hands to signal that he had enough. Captain, am I blinded? The maid's eyes were a little dull. What you brought back just now was just a starving fellow, right? It's definitely not the kind of guy who is covered in blood and has broken bones. He looks like he's going to die. Right. It must be so, right? So, what the hell happened? The chef who came out of the kitchen after washing his hands was also amazed. Originally, it is indeed about to die. As an amateur doctor on the ship, he dealt with the injury of Paso, who was brought back by Vlad before. He knows how much Paso was injured. To put it bluntly, If there is a slight error, this man will only die. This road can be walked, but now, after only a few dozen minutes, this man can already gobble up in front of the dining table. It can be said that, apart from Vlad, who has seen Passo's recovery with his own eyes, this man is the most shocked. It's amazing. Serena muttered to herself and said, it's even better than the captain. Captain, so what did you guys do before? Enel was very surprised when he said this. Anyway, this person was brought back by him and Vlad, but now he has almost recovered in a blink of an eye. It's amazing how you look at it. What happened? Vlad said, I'm curious too. So it's almost eaten now. Vlad laughed, can you say it already? Huh. Passo shuddered suddenly and came back to his senses. Oh, well, I've had enough. Who asked you this? Vlad patted his forehead and said helplessly, how can I ask you about this? Ah, is it? I'm sorry, I was distracted. Passo apologized naturally, I'm sorry. Forget it, I almost know what kind of person you are. Vlad sighed and asked, what I want to ask is, what the hell is that gummy thing? Of course it's not reluctant, can you answer it? Oh, is that so? Is that what Mr. wants to ask? Passo suddenly realized, no problem, and it's not something that can't be said. Really? Great, I'm super curious. Vlad moved a chair and sat beside Passo, looking forward to it. Where to start, or the reason for such a big change in this island? Passo looked to the ceiling and recalled, that was a long, long time ago. It has to start with my teacher. My teacher's name is Hakata. He is a biologist. About 20 years ago, I came to this island for the first time. At that time, the island was still a poor small town. The fishing village is not as prosperous as it is now. Quote, I was an orphan at that time, and I was able to live because of the help of the villagers in the village. I was really poor at that time, and the pirates would not be interested in looting when they came here. Until one day I met a man on the coast with a small child. Passo showed a warm smile in the sky, looking messy, with unshaven beard and disheveled hair. He's an old man who seems weird. But he's actually a nice guy. I'm very curious about him. He's a very weird person. He runs around the island with the kid next to him every day, and he doesn't communicate with people. He doesn't know what he's doing. I follow behind them every day. Of course I can't do anything to hide, but the old man didn't care at all. Gradually, I became more courageous and began to dare to follow them all day long. Later, naturally, I became the teacher's disciple. I learned that the teacher is a biologist and that he was studying the magical existence called the bloodline factor. Descent factor. The chef opened his mouth in surprise. He knew this thing. He had heard of such a thing when he was in Germa. King of the Kingdom of Germa, the highest scientist of the kingdom, Vinsmoke Judge really created a few monsters through this technology. Heirs. Yes, the bloodline factor really involves the essence of human beings, or, in other words, the technology of God's forbidden zone. Passo said with some emotion, the technology that can interfere with the human body from the genetic level. Then what then? Vlad's eyes lit up and asked. And then, me and another kid, Jack, study under the teacher. Passo said, time passed quickly, and soon the teacher became familiar with the people on the island. The enthusiastic fisherman and the teacher had a good relationship and often held banquets together, although they were poor, although the teacher could not drink alcohol. But, really enjoyable, quote. So the teacher decided to do something for this poor fishing village, especially after he knew that there was a precious fish in the deep sea of this island. He finally knew what he could do. So he made the bait. Vlad laughed. Well, using the technology of the bloodline factor, we have created a bait that can attract kuro fish from the deep sea of thousands of meters. Passo said, the process is not easy, because it is too difficult to know the characteristics of the kuro fish. The teacher has never seen this kind of fish that is too precious. How can you know its characteristics? But things always take a turn for the better. A suddenly caught wave kuro fish broke the silence. Just convincing the villagers who want to sell directly to make money is already very difficult, but, in the end, the future depicted by the teacher moved these people. The villagers, this fish, was used as experimental material. So, the bait was invented. Paso said so. Why do you look unhappy? Vlad said, isn't that a good thing for Pokuro? Yeah, Pokuro Island has become rich because of this. Paso said, but this bait is not perfect. The reason why the bait can attract the Kuro fish is because of a characteristic of this fish, a very cruel characteristic. This kind of fish is a solitary fish. I am afraid that it will rarely meet except for breeding. Once they meet, they will fight endlessly. Their favorite food is the flesh and blood of the same kind. Even if it is separated by a few kilometers in the sea, these fish can easily smell the blood of their own kind. Quote. So. Vlad understood. The only thing that can attract Kuro fish is the same kind of flesh and blood. Paso murmured to himself, that is to say, the so-called bait that has been attracting this kind of extremely precious fish has always transformed its constitution to a level close to the Kuro fish through the bloodline factor technology. The flesh and blood of the Kuro people. Paso said with such a wry smile. Chapter 232 just around the corner. The blood of the Kuro people. The chef's eyes suddenly bulged, and he said in disbelief, is that kind of food actually fished from the sea with these things? Yeah, the teacher didn't think too much about it at the time. Paso said with a bit of desolation, the teacher's technical level was not very mature at that time. It is already very powerful to be able to create such a bait. Why must human flesh be used as bait? The maid slowly exhaled a mouthful of smoke and asked this question to ease the surprise in her heart. That's the limit of the technology at the time. Paso said, teacher's technical level at that time was limited, and the only one kind of bloodline factor that could be solved was human beings. It would be very difficult to briefly integrate Kuro's bloodline factor into the human body. Even with bait, it is not easy to catch Kuro fish. It takes about a month for a fisherman to catch a fish on average. This month, he has to bleed and cut his flesh every day. It was also the wish of the teacher and us at the time to use the rest of the animals as bait carriers. Paso sighed and said so. However, the teacher's body did not last until that day. Soon after the bait was developed, he came to the end of his life due to an accident. Paso said sadly, this is the end of the development of new bait. Why? Vlad inquired, why not continue the study? Why? Paso opened his mouth and said, the reason is very simple. At that time, my skills were far from the level of my teacher. It took not only time to continue my research, but also a lot of experimental materials. Oh. Vlad laughed, so fishermen who have already tasted the wealth brought by the Kuro fish don't want to donate the priceless and precious fish for research, right? After all, the existing bait is enough. Yeah, I don't know when it started, those honest villagers are no longer what they were at the time. Money, what a wonderful thing. Paso said, even Jack, who was studying under the teacher with me, deviated from our ideals. He established the Kuro Fishing Company, using the bait as capital, and quickly mastered the island. Monopoly, Pokuro fish trade all over the island. Quote. The fishermen have worked so hard to catch a fish, and they have to take a huge commission every time. This city, the residents here, is far from being as bright and beautiful as it looks. Paso sighed. Vlad said strangely, then why don't you want to do something for your hometown? Just look at it like that. Do what? What do you mean? Paso hesitated. Like saving the island. Vlad said so. Rescue. Paso murmured, how can there be such a statement? This island has never needed any rescue. Although they have to pay 50% of their income, but even so, a wave of Kuro fish can make their lives very nourishing. But even so, there are people who want to take the risk of offending the fishing company and dispose of their own Kuro fish, like what we saw in the daytime today. Isn't it? Vlad smiled, that's interesting. Well, yes. Paso agreed. So, that weird fudge of yours is also your masterpiece. Vlad said so. Well, through the bloodline factor. Dash 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 dash. That means you didn't kill that guy. In the dark house, it was difficult to hide his burly figure even when he was sitting, and the voice of the man with a thick cigar in his mouth was very low. Well, I'm sorry, I've already made a real move. I'm about to kill that guy, but that fire dragon suddenly appeared and disrupted the situation. The man named Jack sat across from him, with an apologetic look on his face, as expected of Shichibukai's name. I can't understand his strength at all. Too naive. Before that guy became Shichibukai, he was a big pirate with a bounty of 750 million, and his strength is not something that a guy like you who has never entered a great route can imagine. The man said so. Sir, are you confident enough to defeat him if you shoot? Jack asked. He had an almost blind trust in this man. Jack actually had a very strange mentality for this man who suddenly appeared and took away the Bokuro fishing company he had worked so hard to establish with his terrifying force. On the one hand, it was resentment. His hard work has been picked peaches, it is impossible not to hold grudges. However, on the other hand, he was more afraid of this man's strength, which was the most complete powerlessness, so he was very curious, if it was this man, would he be able to take down that Shichibukai? Shichibukai. The man let out a sigh of disdain and said with a smile, as a Marine, he actually joined the government's banner. Ha, the smartest guys living on the sea. They're just a bunch of cowards. Really? Jack nodded reassuringly. He easily diffused his attack before. When he didn't exist, the man who took Paso in front of him left a heavy psychological shadow on him. The top-level combat power said that it could be done, and he was still somewhat comforted. It's your fault after all. The man said, wouldn't it be better to kill that man earlier? Why keep him? Hey, don't say that, sir. Jack smiled and said, anyway, he was also the one who studied under a teacher with me before. How could he be so cruel to kill him? Besides, he has always been relatively quiet, and he doesn't like to do things, so he does research in silence. I'm still wondering if he can do something for us. There's really no way out this time. Who made that guy get involved with the awesome guy? Oh, I really know how to say it. Man said, that's why I'll keep you. You're a natural villain. Don't say that, sir, I just want to make money. Jack said so. So, how's your research going? The man asked. Very successful. Jack smiled and said, I have already tested it on Paso before. Through the bloodline factor, the genes of animals are temporarily integrated into the genes of people, so that ordinary people like me can also have terrifying power. Quote. Oh, that's the best news I've heard lately. Man said, it didn't take me so many years to wait for you. So can it be popularized now? The man asked eagerly. No, my body has been specially prepared. This genetic potion is different from the bait potion made by the old guy. Although I don't want to admit it, the old guy's technology is not comparable to me. A normal person, if you use it once, it will probably cause your genes to collapse. Quote. Is that so? Does it still take a while to perfect it? Man was silent for a while, then said, forget it, it doesn't matter, I've waited for so long, and I don't care about the extra time. The Gene Legion. Go to Hualong tomorrow, bring that man back. With his help, your research progress will be accelerated. The man said so. Blue blue blue. The voice of the phone bug rang, and Jack knowingly exited the room. Click. The call was picked up by the man. Hey, long time no see, senior. Chapter 233 Rattling Swords. Are you going? Draeger, the ship of the Fire Dragon pirates, Vlad said. In front of him is Paso who has recovered. X-23 US. Com updates fastest. Since the injury is completely healed, I have no reason to disturb you. Paso said so. Is that so? Vlad smiled and said, no way. I have a good impression of you. Quote. Paso looked at Vlad coldly and did not speak. How is it? Paso, do you want to come to my ship? Be my partner? Vlad smiled. He was really interested in this man. This man named Paso was very much in line with his heart. Both his character and ability were in line with his standards. Anyway, there were only 5 people on board. One more person is obviously a better thing. Quote. Paso stared blankly at Vlad without speaking. His eyes widened, as if he was thinking about something. What? Don't you want to? Yeah, Tilda. Vlad smiled and said, aren't you thinking about it? It's not something anyone can do to get on my ship. Don't look at me like this, I'm also one of the members of the so-called King Shichibukai. Quote. A real-world famous big pirate. It's really not an easy thing to be my crew member. Neat. Paso turned his head, as if he was hesitant because of Vlad's words. Yeah, thinking about it, my onboard benefits are great, except for not assigning girlfriends, everything is distributed. Vlad thinks his words have shaken Paso and hit the railroad while it's hot. Huh. Paso shuddered suddenly, looked back at Vlad and said, well, okay. Crack. Vlad slapped his head with a slap, are you distracted at such a time? Sorry, I was distracted. Paso resolutely admitted his mistake. Okay. Vlad waved his hand weakly, you go. Goodbye. Oh, that's good, I'll go first. Paso said blankly. Then, the man turned his head and planned to disembark. Ah, no, I almost forgot. Paso turned his head sharply, and said eagerly, Mr. Vlad, do you have any Pokuro fish left? My experiment is only one step away. Just get a little Pokuro fish flesh or bones, maybe a brand new bait will be made soon. Yes. Vlad smiled, of course there are leftovers, such a big fish, we can't finish it all in one meal. Excellent. Paso looked very excited, can you give me a little? It doesn't need much, just a little. I refuse. Vlad raised his eyebrows and said, although it's not a great request, but I refuse. Quote. Paso was stunned for a moment, but did not expect that Vlad, who was very enthusiastic and forthright before, would reject him so bluntly. Because you rejected me just now. So I have to reject you once. Vlad laughed. Yeah. Paso gave a smile, Mr. Vlad, you are so interesting. It was at this time that Vlad turned his head sharply and looked towards the island through the side of the boat. A group of people had already stood on the shore, headed by a man. Crack. Thunder and lightning came together, the man with the upper body, the amateur boatman of the Fire Dragon Pirates, Enel appeared in front of Vlad. Captain, is there a guest here? Guests. Vlad strolled to the side of the boat and smiled, not everyone is qualified to be our guest. Fire Dragon, Vlad, right. The man standing on the shore with his hands behind his back was very tall and burly. He seemed to be over 3 meters tall. He was wearing a white suit, with a top hat on his head and a cigar in his mouth. When he woke up, he was no longer young, and he seemed to be in his 60s, with deep wrinkles already carved on his face. Behind him was Jack, who was easily repelled by Vlad last night and took away Paso. This short man hid behind the old man, and looked at Vlad with a flinching look in his eyes. Yeah, Tilda, here comes an old man. Vlad put his hands on the side of the boat and smiled, why, do you have any advice? Grandpa. What a junior who doesn't understand etiquette, or all new pirates like this now. The old man said so. Oh, could it be that the old man is still the old pirate from the past? Vlad raised his eyebrows and asked. Well, I have no obligation to answer you. The old man was very angry. He really is a grumpy senior. Vlad smiled, so, senior, what is your purpose for coming here? I just wanted to see what the so-called Shichibukai looks like. The old man's face twitched, and he said with some disdain, it doesn't seem like this now. Fire Dragon Vlad, huh? Jack, who was standing behind the old man, looked at the tall figure in front of him in surprise. This was different from what he said. Didn't he just come to find Fire Dragon to bring Paso back? Tilde. Vlad narrowed his eyes. Is he here to make trouble? He really is a bad-tempered senior. Kid, I won't say more nonsense. Hand over that guy named Paso. The old man said so. Is it for Mr. Paso? Vlad laughed. Hey, Mr. Paso, I'm looking for you. Vlad turned his head. Huh, oh, okay. Paso agreed calmly. Don't worry, I'm looking for you. Vlad was a little helpless. Oh, good. Paso nodded, walked to the side of the ship, and had a face-to-face with the group of people on the shore. What? Jack's eyes widened suddenly, looking very surprised. What did he see? Paso, who was beaten to the brink by him last night, actually appeared in front of him alive and well. What the hell is going on? What's wrong? The old man asked softly. Last night, I obviously beat him to death, but... Jack answered in a low voice. What? Interesting. The old man said with great interest. Is there a very powerful ship doctor on the Fire Dragon's ship? No, such an effect can no longer be achieved by pure medical skills. Is it a devil fruit? Jack. Paso said in surprise. Are you looking for me? Yes, Paso. Jack walked to the old man's side, not daring to stand shoulder to shoulder with the old man, and said with a smile, come to our side. Continue the teacher's research. Are you going to develop new bait too? Great, Jack. Pa Zoro looked overjoyed. Of course not, it's something more meaningful. Jack laughed. No, then I refuse. Paso was stunned for a moment, then directly refused. No, you would. Chapter 334 The crowd is turbulent. Answer me, Fire Dragon. Are you going to shelter this guy? Shouted the old man on the bank. Ah, wanted him on my boat. After all, this guy is really funny. Vlad said this, a little helpless, but it seems that people don't want it. Ha ha ha, have you been rejected directly? It's really ugly. The old man suddenly burst out laughing, looking very cheerful. Is this the so-called Shichibukai? It's too embarrassing, isn't it? Captain, do you want me to kill him? Enel, who was standing with Vlad, said this, with a dangerous smile on his face. Now Enel has truly regarded himself as a member of this ship, and he can't watch his captain now. Such things as being insulted. Vlad waved his hand and said with a smile, no, this old man looks quite interesting. It seems that he has a deep opinion on Shichibukai. This is very interesting. That means you're not going to shelter him anymore. The old man said so. Hey, no need, everyone has his own choice. Since he chose not to get on my boat, then of course I won't interfere in his life path. Vlad said, is there no problem? Brother Paso. Yeah. Paso nodded, my own choices do not require others to bear the consequences for me. Come down then, Paso. Jack, who was standing on the shore, said this. His eyes were filled with fervent hope. As long as his fellow apprentice and brother joined him, his research progress would be greatly advanced. Gene Core, who would do that kind of thing? To be able to become a god, it is enough to be one. Jack turned his back to the old man, his eyes flashing with ambition, even if he had to use the power of the man he had always hated the most. As I said before, this man's feelings for the old man who took everything from him are more of a fear of his power. If he can obtain stronger power, it goes without saying what this guy will do. Paso slowly got off the boat, walked leisurely in front of Jack, and faced with his former senior brother, who did not miss the past friendship at all last night, and tried to directly kill his man face to face. Let's go then, Paso. Jack said, we really need your help. Don't. Paso's refusal didn't hesitate, I just want to make better bait that the teacher expects now. Also, bait is not my subject of research. Jack said, but you can also study it. It's not too much trouble, you haven't gotten a single wave kuro fish for more than 10 years, but it's not so rare here. If you join us, think there is absolutely no problem with doing experiments. Quote. How are you coming? Jack said so. Quote. Quote. Paso was silent and did not speak. Hey, did you listen to me? Jack is a little helpless. When will this guy's habit of wandering off his mind be corrected? No distractions. Paso began. I'm listening. Oh, is it? Then. Jack laughed. Come here. With our help, your research will be a success soon, right? But I refuse. Paso said so. Huh, why? Jack was surprised. Why, it's so simple. Paso said, the teacher made the bait just to improve the lives of the people on this island, just to let these kind people live well, not to make you profit from it. Huh, are you as pedantic as that old man? Paso, do you still want to do something for the people of this island? Jack laughed. Well, wouldn't that be better? The sparse footsteps sounded, and the dark crowd gradually approached. This is fun. Vlad laughed. So, what's the choice? This is. Paso's eyes gradually widened, looking extremely surprised, and there was something brewing in his eyes. What, Paso, don't you want to do something for these guys? Do you want to develop new bait that won't damage their bodies? Jack smiled. Isn't the chance coming now? Behind him, there is a crowd of people with dark skin and the smell of seawater. There is no doubt that these people are fishermen on the island, which is what Paso wants to improve the bait and finally wants to help. People. Come on, Paso. Jack said, come and do something for the people you want to help. Please Mr. Paso, help us. Please, Mr. Paso. You grew up on this island too. Please help your hometown. Quote. Quote. Such voices have grown from nothing, from low-pitched murmurs to almost loud denunciations. It seems that Paso doesn't do something for them, it's just God. A longing face with a natural look. Ha, this is the people you want to save. Vlad smiled, although they say they don't need rescue anymore, but in fact they are constantly slaves hoping to change the status quo, so what will you do in the face of the current situation? Paso. Voice is also an amazing force. The will of hundreds of people is enough to break a person's psychology. You. Paso looked around in a daze, looking at the crowd of people who didn't know what they were thinking. How is it, Paso? Jack laughed. That way you can come to my side. After all. Jack waved his hand and turned to look at the people behind him. This is what everyone thinks too. Quote. Quote. Paso was speechless. His mouth seemed to be blocked by something. Are the people behind Jack really still the simple, kind, warm and generous villagers back then? What, it's all a hideous face. Mr. Paso, please help Mr. Jack. You don't want to see us go fishing with our blood and flesh all the time, do you? This is also Mr. Hakata's wish. Don't you want to fulfill your teacher's wish as a disciple? Yeah, Mr. Paso, you were raised by us, didn't you? Wouldn't it be a matter of course to help us? Yes, Paso. Jack said with a smile, don't you want to do something for your hometown when you grew up here? Quote. Quote. Paso bowed his head, unable to see his expression. I refuse. Chapter 235 Power Gummy. What did you say? Jack's expression changed and he said coldly. I said I refused. Paso raised his head, his somewhat dull face full of determination. I want to make an improved bait just the teacher's will. Paso said this, but there were tears in his eyes. I don't know why. This is just my business and has nothing to do with other people. Whether it's Jack or you, or the residents of the island, it has nothing to do with you. I just want to do it myself. Yeah, this guy. Vlad smiled. It's not as pedantic as imagined. You said you refused. Jack asked in a calm tone. I refuse. Paso replied. Really, what a pity. Jack smiled. It used to be a peaceful solution. But now it seems that we have to rely on force. Paso, you forced me. Do you want me to take action? The old man who had never spoken said so. No, it's just a weak guy. It's really not difficult to take him down, sir, you just need to be on guard against the fire dragon. Don't let them interfere. Jack said so. Hey, don't get me wrong. Vlad, who was leaning on the side of the boat, said loudly, I'm just watching the fun, he's not my crew member, how can I care about him? It's better. The old man put his hands around his chest and said so. That would be great. Jack stepped forward, his eyes were a little cold, and he was already holding a green injection in his hand. Don't worry, Paso, I won't kill you this time. Jack stuck a needle in his neck, after all, I have to keep you here to help me. Now I really think that the old man died a little too early. Jack's body swelled visibly to the naked eye, and his short body had soared to about 3 meters in a short period of time. Every time I use it, it feels amazing. The veins on Jack's forehead burst, and his face flushed red, but his expression was extremely happy. Look, Paso, this is the technology that surpasses that old man completely. Jack said, using the technology of bloodline factors, the genes of animals are integrated into my body through injections in a short time, so as to achieve genetic enhancement. Simply. Something like devil fruit. What is this? The chef, who had been attracted to the deck by the movement outside, said in surprise, is this also what the bloodline factor can do? Sure enough, is it really comparable to the power of the god of creation? This. The maid flicked the soot lightly and said, it's a very powerful thing. It's still too early to sigh. Vlad said this, his eyes looking at Paso, I can see more interesting things today. Paso, are you already stunned? Jack twisted his neck and made a crackling sound. You, who have been working on that useless bait, never thought that the bloodline factor could do such a thing. Okay, Paso, will you continue to resist when you see me looking like this? Jack said with some confidence. Let's just surrender like this. Paso, my current brute strength. I'm really afraid of punching you to death. Quote. Paso did not speak, silently took out a glass bottle with colorful fondant from his pocket, slowly twisted the bottle cap, took out a blue fondant and put it in his mouth, slowly. Of chewing. Sure enough. Vlad said, as expected, there are. Is there really a gummy that can be used for battle? Hey, are you still in the mood to eat candy now? Jack laughed, is it because of fear? Do you want sugar to ease your fear because of fear? Smart. Paso whispered, smart fudge. What? Jack said somewhat incomprehensibly, what did you say? Are you going to continue rejecting me? Jack. Paso said, I've already figured it out. Before, I didn't care if you let you continue to use the teacher's hard work for profit, because I thought that the life of the island's residents would be better. But now, I know. Perhaps the appearance of the bait was originally a mistake. Although this originally poor, but beautiful and peaceful village has become like this. Maybe it would be better here without the bait. Paso's eyes became serious, so, I'll just be here and hit you. Hit me. Jack was stunned for a moment, then laughed out loud, ha 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 ha, you said you were going to hit me. Boom. The ground under Jack's feet shattered instantly, and the huge body dashed forward at a completely unmatched speed, pounced directly towards Paso. Why are you? Boom. Jack's sturdy right arm slammed violently, and the ground smashed into a huge pit, as if it had been bombarded with shells in a row. He was just a thin man just now, but now he can easily blast it out with his fist. With such power, the effect of that so-called potion is really remarkable. However, the only shortcoming is that there is no Paso figure in that pit. Gone. Jack's eyes widened, and it was a little strange for a while. I don't know why the man suddenly disappeared. Back, idiot. The old man standing on the side couldn't see it, and said so loudly. Behind. Jack couldn't help but froze for a moment. Vivi turned his head and saw a tall and thin figure in his peripheral vision. A man named Paso had appeared behind him. Bang. Jack waved his hand violently, his body suddenly twisted back, and his thick arm swept towards the back with a howling wind. Woo! The air made an overwhelming roar. Jack's arms really carry amazing strength. But... gone again. Jack couldn't help but froze again. The man disappeared again. Is that what you're proud of, Jack? Passo's voice came from behind him. You guy. Jack turned his head in disbelief. Passo was holding a yellow fondant in his hand, and his expression was a little cold. What the hell did you do? Jack asked. What did it do? Wasn't it very simple? Passo threw the tan fondant into his mouth and said, it's the same thing you did just now. What do you mean? Jack looked horrified. Well, it means power gummy. Chapter 236 Beasts. Power gummy. Passo said so. X23 US. Com updates fastest. Power gummy. Jack muttered to himself, could it be? Did you say? You bastard. Jack looked in disbelief. You can do things. Passo's slender body began to quickly become majestic, but he did not become as tall as Jack and became like a monster, but his slender body became more symmetrical and more masculine. Spirit. However, although there is no huge change in body shape, compared to Jack, Passo's body has undergone more drastic changes. Black hair quickly grew out of the skin, and it soon covered his body. There's no reason why I can't do it. At the same time, his face is also undergoing amazing changes. His facial features are rapidly distorted, his eyes have become narrow and long, his nose has become somewhat similar to that of cats, his ears have gradually become sharper, and his fangs have begun to grow. There are even 2 cow-like horns growing on the head. The whole person looks like an orc. Next, let's see the difference between my strength and yours. Passo said so. What a joke. Jack roared in disbelief. His sturdy right leg stepped heavily on the ground, and the huge body instantly turned into an afterimage, rushing directly towards Passo. Boom. Vivi, contracted like a cat. Go to hell, Passo. Jack shouted so loudly, the strange changes in Passo made the man completely lose his mind. The man who thought he had surpassed his teacher now suddenly found that the senior brother he had always looked down upon showed a technique that surpassed him. How can he keep calm? The muscles of Jack's right arm bulged high, and the terrifying power contained in it. At this moment, he no longer had the idea of showing mercy. Crack. What? Jack roared in disbelief. A black-haired punch that he gave with all his might was easily caught by Passo. Is it so unbelievable? Passo whispered, and the left hand holding Jack's arm jerked violently. Jack only felt an astonishing force from Passo's hand, which made him stagger directly. Bang! Passo clenched his fist with his right hand and hit Jack's cheek heavily. Jack's blushing face was instantly distorted, and he was directly punched out by Passo. Dash 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 dash. Hey, this. Platinum, drag, the chef said in surprise, is this really the effect of medicine? This, no matter how you look at it, looks like the power of a devil fruit, right? Whether its appearance or power, it's all about power. Like Zone's fruit power. The chef's words are not unreasonable. To be honest, if you don't know in advance that Passo's change is due to the effect of drugs, the first reaction of normal people is that he is a zone devil fruit capable person who can change his body like an animal. Who would believe that such an ability is not a zone ability? Yes, such an ability is not a zone ability, who would believe it? Vlad said, but this is really the effect of the drug, the effect of the so-called lineage factor. This is really amazing. Yeah, no matter how many times I watch it, I will feel that this kind of technology is really amazing. The maid let out a breath of smoke and sighed sincerely. So, will there be such a conclusion? Vlad smiled back. What conclusion? Enel said, looks like it's going to be a very shocking thing. What the captain means is, could it be that the devil fruit itself is man-made? The chef said with some difficulty. It's like Mr. Passo used the technology of a more advanced bloodline factor. In fact, the essence of the devil fruit is a kind of genetic medicine, which can achieve the purpose of empowerment by changing the user's genes. Quote. That's what the captain wanted to say, said the chef. Bingo. Vlad snapped his fingers and said, that's it. That's all I want to say. No way. The maid said in disbelief, and the cigarette in her hand fell on the deck without noticing. How could the devil fruit be man-made? The musician Serena, who agreed to stand aside, did not understand much, but was still actively participating in the discussion. Why isn't it possible? Vlad looked at Paso, who had stopped changing under the boat, and said, although I still don't know what the principle of paramesha and logia is, but zone's devil fruit is probably like this. The old man with his arms crossed his chest had a surprised look on his face. Is this guy's skill better than Jack? Ahahahaha, this is great. I originally thought that it would take a few years to achieve my goal, but I didn't expect that the opportunity would be placed in front of me. Dash 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 dash. No matter what these onlookers think, the battle between Paso and Jack continues. No, impossible. Jack covered his swollen cheeks, and could vaguely see a fist mark on his cheeks, and roared hysterically, this is impossible. How could you? Why not? Paso said, what you can do, why can't I do it? It's impossible, it's just how you can do it. Jack stood up and shouted angrily. His body rushed over again. The huge body was full of oppression. This is what ordinary people would feel scared just by seeing it. Even what it took me more than 10 years to do, how can a guy like you do the same thing? The most proud man always has a feeling that the world is unreal when he realizes that he is not special. At this moment, Jack is already a little crazy. Dong dong dong. The sound of heavy footsteps is accompanied by the broken earth. The man's eyes are red with his muscles. Endless killing intent is contained in it. The same thing. Paso said in surprise, what are you kidding? Jack, are you insulting me? Crack. Jack is only a researcher after all, and fighting back and forth is just 2 tricks, but fortunately, Paso is also a researcher, and he is also not very good at fighting. Facing Jack flying towards him, Paso showed agility that completely crushed the level. With a light step on his feet, he was clearly a tall 3-meter-tall figure, but he was as dexterous as a cat and easily avoided Jack's bashing. Damn. As soon as Jack missed the hit, he couldn't help clenching his teeth, and just wanted to turn around and continue the attack. A pair of hands wrapped around his waist. Paso stood behind him and hugged him tightly. Stop kidding, Jack. Stop looking down on my skills. Paso said angrily, can a single potion like yours be on a par with my strength gummy? It combines the power gummy of several beasts with outstanding strength. What kind of bull potion is your guy's potion? Comparable. Boom. As soon as Paso stood up, he picked up Jack directly, bent down sharply, and threw Jack directly to the ground. Crack. The ground cracked like ice. A fusion of the genes of several beasts. Vlad showed a meaningful smile. Hey, then, if there are a few more genes, shouldn't it be called a beast? Chapter 237 Pirate Senior. One after another cracks spread wantonly, and the corner of the island near the sea shattered directly. The terrifying power made the surrounding like an earthquake. After the beastization, Paso showed terrifying power. The fishermen from this island who were standing behind the old man looked terrified and stepped back involuntarily. He had never seen such a battle before. Whoosh! The huge human body flew directly out of the smoke. Driven by a huge force, the man named Jack fell heavily into the crowd. The terrifying force instantly killed or injured the fishermen around him. Perhaps, this is the end of the melon-eating crowd. Da, da, da. Light footsteps came from the smoke, and the tall Paso walked out of the smoke, unscathed, and his hideous face after the beastization seemed to be troubled. He said so. Sorry, Jack, it's a bit of a surprise. The genes of beasts are not so easy to control. Even in my heart now, there is a tyrannical desire to vent violently. I'm sorry, but I was a little too hard on it. Well, It seems that this point needs to be improved. The humanity of human beings should not be suppressed by the beastly nature of animals. Passo said angrily, sure enough, it's not perfect, shouldn't it be? The two bodies broke through the air and flew directly towards Passo. The two fishermen who were watching the fun were directly thrown over by the furious Jack. This is really... Passo, who had gradually calmed down, smiled wryly and stretched out his two hands to gently catch the two fishermen with terrified expressions on their faces, looked at Jack who was running over, and said, is it irrational? Haven't you noticed the difference in strength between us? Tang. Jack jumped up abruptly, the ground shattered like a piece of paper, and the man jumped directly to the height of dozens of meters. The explosion-like force was astonishing. Get out of the way. Jack threw it casually and threw the two fishermen in his hands into the sea behind him. Now, these guys can't participate in the battlefield between him and Jack's two monsters. Passo. Quote. Such a howl. The man who fell from the sky raised his two huge fists high and smashed them down with a terrifying impact. It doesn't seem so easy to stop. Passo raised his hands. Boom. The earth is subverting. Even the sea near the island is shaking. Dash 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 dash. No, let them fight like this, and one will definitely fall. The white-haired old man of Whitebeard thought, although it seems that Passo's technical level is better, it seems impossible to popularize it. The research progress of two people must be faster than the progress of one person. Stop them. Old man thought so, I want both of them. Even though he is old, the majestic old man exudes a strange aura. He has two completely different feelings from Passo and Jack. If I have to say it, it is a scientist with a gun and a real soldier who has experienced many battles. Difference. There is no need to doubt, this old man is indeed a strong man who has made his way out of the sea. He moved his steps. Boom. The ground in front of him shattered violently, like demolition, and the surrounding environment was devastated to the extreme. Huh, boy. The old man looked at the man who slammed down in front of him in surprise, and said, what do you mean? The man standing in front of him said with a chuckle, the captain of my family doesn't want you to disturb the battle between the two. The captain of my family is very interested in the battle between these two people, so this old gentleman, please stop. Go. Are you trying to stop Lao Su? The old man looked very surprised, as if he didn't understand why this man dared to stand in front of him. The name of the incoming person is Dino, Croft, Dino, the chef of the Fire Dragon Pirates, and the Paramesha Oil Fruit ability. Fire Dragon, is that what you mean? The old man turned his head and shouted at Vlad on the boat. Vlad watched with interest the two beasts fighting on the other side, but he didn't pay any attention to the old man. He was no longer interested in beating the old man. Please don't make it difficult for me, old gentleman, the captain, he has no interest in you. Chef smiled and said, since you know our identity, then you should understand the consequences of starting a war with us, old gentleman. Quote. PFF ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. The old man was silent for a while, followed by a burst of earth-shattering laughter, as if he had heard something extremely funny. Ha ha ha, do you really take yourself seriously? Little devils. Old man said, do you really think of your Shichibukai identity so effectively? The sea, it's not like you little devils can go up and down. Boom. The huge fist ripped through the air and blasted out heavily. The old man punched the chef without hesitation. Without any hesitation. What a grumpy old man. The chef exclaimed. Bang. The strong shock wave spread out, no less than the two monsters that were demolishing. What? The old man's face was obviously stunned. His fist did not touch the chef himself. A yellow wall-like thing blocked between them, blocking his fist easily. What an arrogant senior. Chef said, do you think you can beat me just by wrapping around armament? Don't you even use hardening? A capable one. Old man withdrew his fist and said, you didn't take the opportunity to attack me, what are you thinking? Take the opportunity. Chef was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, no need, senior. There is absolutely no need for such a thing. The captain will let me come over, which means he thinks that my strength is enough to suppress you. You say, what? The old man's voice gradually fell, and silent anger was brewing in it. Maybe, senior, you were also a big pirate who swept the sea before. Maybe you were proud of your experience, and maybe you would underestimate a young pirate like us because of this. Chef said with a smile, but, senior, you have to understand that the times are different. In the new era, there are not many ships that belong to you. Little devil. The old man raised his head, the blue veins on his forehead throbbing frantically, when I sailed on the sea where Roger and Whitebeard Golden Lion were fighting for hegemony. Where are you still? Bang. The two black fists collided violently. The strong storm blew up everything around in an instant. The battle officially begins. Chapter 238 Furious Beast. The earth is breaking and the air is howling. The terrifying power was scattered wantonly, and the unskilled physical conflict of the two monster-like guys completely destroyed the corner of this sea-facing island. Roar. The man named Jack has grown taller and taller, and has almost reached a height of about 4 meters. At the same time, with the soaring body, the more obvious change is that his pale skin is now a result of his long-term obsession with research. It became a little darker, the light hair began to grow, the short horns on his head began to grow, the nostrils continued to expand, the inside of the eyes were red, and the whole person looked like a human cow. It seems that he has completely lost his mind. This guy will no longer think too much. After a little bit of power, the huge fist slams out, and the thin air makes an overwhelmed bang. Have you lost your mind completely? Paso, who only felt a fierce gust of wind blowing towards his face, thought so. The situation of Jack in front of him is obviously that the genes belonging to the bulls in his body have taken the upper hand, and the rationality of a human being has been completely suppressed by the more ferocious animal nature. Paso held out a hand. Crack. The wind is overflowing. Some scenes that subvert people's three views have appeared. The ground under Paso's feet instantly turned into pieces and scattered, but his extremely thin palm compared to Jack's huge fist really easily blocked Jack's terrifying blow. Paso's gummy candy and Jack's bull potion are the same type of things developed on the basis of the bloodline factor technology. They both temporarily implant the animal's genes into their bodies through the bloodline factor. In this way, he has obtained an unimaginable power that is comparable to that of a devil fruit. But although they are the same type of drug, in fact, the efficacy of the two is very different. Jack's bull potion just blends the genes of the bull, which can provide him with amazing power, but that's about it. The two gummies used by Paso, the smart gummies and the power gummies, are far more than that. They are the results of reconciling the genes of several animals, eliminating defects, strengthening advantages, and Jack's elixir is not a product of the same era at all. The speed of a leopard, the agility of a cat, and the perception of air flow of a fly, these 3 points alone, Paso's dexterous gummies, are enough to make Jack unable to touch the corners of his clothes, especially the sensitive hair on the body surface. The ability to sense the airflow, to be honest, in such a close-knit moment, the effect is enough to be on a par with the high-level observation hockey. Coupled with Paso's unimaginable reflex nerves and amazing speed at this time, as long as he wanted to, Jack, who had only strengthened his strength, couldn't even touch him. But Paso didn't want to do too much, even if he wanted to try his skills and see how much difference Jack made. So he ate another power gummy. Just like the dexterity gummy does not only provide dexterity, the strength potion combines the genes of a variety of animals such as bison, rhino, elephant, bear, etc., and what it brings is not only terrifying power, amazing defense and unimaginable stamina. The consequence of strength and dexterity is that even a guy like Paso, who was a powerless researcher when he was not on drugs, now has enough money and hundreds of millions of rewards. The terrifying power of the big pirates' confrontation. However, such genetic modification is not without side effects. Even guys like Paso and Jack, whose bodies have been modified many times, are prone to beastly overwhelming rationality when using genetic drugs, like it's the same as the Paso before and the Jack now. Roar. The irrational Jack is stronger, but the fighting instinct of the beast is far stronger than that of a researcher who is not good at fighting. If he missed a hit, Jack hit Paso with another punch. It can't go on like this. The short hair on the surface of the body keenly sensed the changes in the airflow, and the sensitivity from the cat in the body made Paso dodge Jack's blow just by gently turning to one side. If you continue to let Jack run wild, you may not be able to recover at all. Then, grit your teeth. Jack! Paso shouted so loudly, for the first time, the right fist was tightly clenched, and the muscles began to bulge on the slender and somewhat symmetrical arm that was far more slender than Jack's thick arm at this time. Bang! With some dull sound, Paso's fist slammed directly on Jack's hairy chest. PFF'd. Jack immediately spewed out a large mouthful of blood, which was vaguely mixed with internal organs. Paso's fist had been deeply imprinted into his chest, and the sound of crunching bones shattering filled the air. Oops. It looks like I've overdone it. Paso, who was unhappy with his own power control, said so. Roar. The pain tends to arouse the beast's beast nature even more. Jack's eyes became more blood red, and he raised his fist vigorously, just wanting to give Paso a blow. What a tough beast. Paso said so, with a light jump, a whip leg, and a heavy slam on Jack's face. The huge body was instantly knocked away under the surging force, and fell heavily on the inside in the distance. Kept rolling back, and plowed a ditch directly on the ground. Cough cough cough. Jack, who was lying on the ground, gradually lost the blood in his eyes, the black hair on his body also began to fade away, and his body began to return to its original shape. But, damn it. Jack was panting, his face was messed up and bloody, damn. Okay, Jack, let's go here. Paso let out a slow sigh of relief, although Jack wanted to kill him, but he couldn't do the same thing. He and Jack were friends who grew up together. Although there were differences in philosophy, it was not the same. Not a reason to take his life. Do you understand now? Paso said, you can't force me. Ha ha ha, ha ha ha, I'm really getting carried away. Paso. Jack reluctantly stood up and laughed with a contorted face, how proud. It's like that old man. What? Paso Vivi frowned. By the way, you never knew it, did you? Jack stood up reluctantly. That's right, I never told you. That old man really likes you. That old man. Jack's eyes were filled with unspeakable malice. That old man, he was saying until he died, I'm definitely not as good as you. Really, keep saying that, keep saying that, keep saying that. Keep saying that, 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 keep saying that. Twitter, 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 it's like flies. Quote. Jack's face had a wanton twist, how annoying. Until later, I gave him a little medicine. Jack's face became stretched, woo finally it's quiet. You said. Paso's eyes suddenly became empty. What? Beast, furious. Chapter 239 The Wall of People. Paso's teacher's name is Bodo, a biologist with a mysterious origin and an old man with a bad temper. When he arrived on the island, he took a child with him. The child's name was Jack, which means now Paso faces Jack. The old man who had already developed the bait was not satisfied, because this kind of bait was extremely imperfect and would cause too much damage to the human body. He wanted to make a more perfect bait, but the old man lost it shortly after that. He lost his life because something went wrong while testing the drug, and his whole body's genes collapsed. Paso watched the old man he admired most turned into a pool of blood in front of him, and he was powerless. X23 US. Com updates fastest. Even though this happened more than 10 years ago, even now, it is a huge scar in Paso's heart. Then, today, such a scar seems to be opened. What did you say? Paso said this, his face is strangely calm, like the sea in the windless zone. It seems that the ancient well has no waves and calm waves, and there are no waves at all, but everyone knows that it is such a calm sea and underground. Hidden are the sea kings that can overturn the sea. What did I say? Ah ha ha. Incredible, right? Jack said, to be honest, I didn't think about it that much at the time. I didn't think about it either. Although you have always looked down on me. Jack's eyes flashed with some excitement, but there is no doubt that the old man is also the same as my father, and I am also brought up by him. Although I've seen him unhappy for a long time, I actually don't want to kill him. Jack said, but, who knows that he helped the two of us with genetic adaptations, but the old guy didn't have it himself. I think maybe it's just to create a bait medicine that even ordinary people can use, so I did this on purpose. Did you do it? So, I really didn't mean it, Paso, trust me. Jack said, I really didn't mean to. Although he was absolving himself of responsibility, in fact, this man had a very wanton smile on his mouth. Oh, I really didn't expect that the gene of another animal was just added to the medicine, and the old man's genes collapsed like this. Ha, obviously he is an expert in genetics, but he lost his life so easily. Jack laughed like this, are you saying it's too funny? Bang! The huge fist smashed directly into Jack's face, and the already bloody face sank directly, and the majestic power was released wantonly on his face. Gaaaaaaaaaaaaaaa. Quote. Facing Paso's unrelenting, all-out punch, Jack was knocked out like a rag doll, like a meteor landing, easily plowing a deep ravine on the ground. Jack. Paso's eyes became red, and an amazing murderous aura was released from his body. It was you. It was you. It was you. It was you. I'm going to kill you. Ha ha ha, cough cough cough. Ha 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 ha. Jack was lying on his back on the ground and seemed to be struggling just by smiling. That's it, Paso, that's right. It's obviously a fusion of the genes of a beast, so why do you have to suppress yourself? Go to hell. Paso took the initiative to attack for the first time. With a heavy step under his feet, the ground shattered like foam. Under the action of terrifying power, Paso's tall body had disappeared. Finally want to kill me? Jack laughed, it's long overdue. But, Paso. Can you kill me? As Jake said, Paso didn't have an impending attack that didn't hurt him. Not at all. The reason is that Paso stopped. Had to stop. Someone stood in front of him, not one person, not two people, not three people, but a group of people, but hundreds of people. The staff of the Pokuro fishing company who were hiding far away, but the fishermen of Pokuro Island who had been coerced by Jack and wanted to force Jack to agree to their demands. You. Paso's eyes widened, a little unbelievable. Although they look very frightened, these trembling fishermen are indeed blocking Paso's face, holding weapons such as harpoons in their hands, and they dare not look at Paso at all. Very scary look. You. Paso's expression was a little inexplicable. Ahahaha. Want to ask why, right? Paso. I neither coerced them nor deceived them. They know exactly what the consequences of getting in your way. Jack laughed wildly, took out a small box from his pocket with some trembling, and took out 3 injections of different colors from it, and said with a smile, the reason is very simple. It can't be simpler. Was a look of determination on Jack's face, because if it wasn't for me, they wouldn't be able to buy bait anymore. They wouldn't be able to catch Kuro anymore. They're going to say goodbye to their rich lives. PFF'd. With some low voices, the 3 injections were directly inserted into Jack's chest. Jack's eyes widened suddenly, his body began to tremble visibly, and the dense meridian spread from the injection site. Jack's face flushed red. Please get out of the way. Paso said so. But it didn't work at all. Although these fishermen were afraid of Paso's terrifying power, they were not afraid of Paso. Bang! The bloated figure swept through the crowd, just like the swirling debris when the bomb exploded. The explosive force directly knocked the body in front of him into the air, and the fragile body twisted wantonly in the air. Until this time, these people still had blank expressions on their faces. Ahahaha, thank you. Come on, perhaps the creature should be called with such a big laugh. Bang. The huge palm slammed on Passo's body like a wall. Dash 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 dash. On the other side, the battle between the other two continues. Gaaa. The sour sound is accompanied by a ground like a building block easily destroyed by a naughty kid, who claimed to be the same era as the One Piece King of Pirates. Whitebeard Golden Lion slammed heavily on a wall of butter that was also dark and emitting a faint glow. The strong force shattered the surrounding earth just in the aftermath, but it was hard to do anything about the wall formed by that ability. Cut. The old man scolded a little unwillingly. Senior, be careful. The chef behind the wall said so. The indestructible butter wall melted instantly, wrapping the old man's fist on it tightly, revealing the chef's body. Whoosh. The ground was slippery and the chef galloped like an ice skating. In the blink of an eye, he threw himself into the arms of the old man, and the two dark kitchen knives in his hands stabbed at it. Chapter 240 Times Change. With the passage of time, the man named Dino gradually got used to the way of fighting with devil fruit. He is just a cook, not a swordsman who can't fight without a knife. For him, victory is all it takes to fight, as long as cooking is really not allowed to be insulted. So after discovering that the ability has greater convenience, he did not give up the development of the devil fruit ability because he used the kitchen knife in his hand to fight before. Dino was just trying to find a more suitable fighting method for him. That's it. Dino's kitchen knives are not made of great materials, they are just well-made kitchen utensils that are specially customized. They are nothing at all, but the most amazing swords in the world are not as good as the advanced armament hockey. The so-called black knives refer to such a sharp blade wrapped around the mighty armament hockey. For hockey masters, even holding a broken branch in hand can fight against those who hold the supremely sharp sword. The existence of hockey greatly weakens the advantages brought by the so-called magic sword. Although he doesn't usually show much, in fact, armament hockey, the chef, is second only to Vlad on the ship, far exceeding the level of Enel and the maid. Wrapped around the powerful armament hockey stabbed directly at the old man's ribs. According to the chef's expectation, this blow could stab into the old man's stomach along the old man's ribs, and stab lightly on the lungs. It won't be fatal, but it can easily diffuse the old man's subsequent resistance. The premise is that the old man will not resist. Little devil. The old man's right fist was tightly bound by the chef, unable to move, and it was difficult to break free for a while, but it was not that he had no chance to fight back. The critical moment actually inspired the old man to have a somewhat restrained blood type after recuperating for many years. The muscles of his left arm suddenly swelled, and the pitch-black hockey wrapped around it, slamming into the head of the chef who was close at hand. At the same time that the chef pierced his chest, his fist must also smash the chef's head. The old man's unhesitating counterattack gave the chef a headache. Although he wanted to hit this arrogant old man severely, he didn't want to be hit hard by this, it was really not worth it. Fortunately, he did not have to be injured for such a reason. Perlulu. When the chef thought about it, his body was like tentacles, and a few slippery things extended out. Then they immediately gathered together, twisted into form to form an arm-like thing. The front end was a fist, the black hockey attached to it, tore the air, and slammed into the old man's fist. Vivi, the blade in Dino's hand, paused, but immediately accelerated and stabbed the old man in the stomach. The change happens between the electric light and flint. Bang! The old man's fist and Dino's butter fist slammed together. The violent wind was released at this moment. The air is howling and the earth is breaking. Gia. Quote. The sour crushing sound, the butter that bound the old man's right arm shattered directly. Whoosh. Just like an arrow from the string, the old man's figure went backwards crazily, the soles of his feet slammed hard, he jumped, and a backflip gently landed on the ground. The old man's face was gloomy. His suit had 2 holes in his ribs, one on the left and one on the right, and faint blood seeped out from it. The chef shook off the blood on the kitchen knife in his hand, looking a little troubled. Although he always used a kitchen knife to fight, he had to change a pair of kitchen knives after each battle. Are your friends cooking? The response is really fast. Senior. The chef smiled like this. I knew I couldn't dodge it, so I decided to trade wounds for wounds, but in fact, I was fighting to break free from my restraint by a violent collision. As expected of an old senior in the sea. Reaction is really not a cover. Yes. Woo. Slowly heaving a sigh of relief, the old man's expression was very serious. What a formidable kid. Isn't that of course? Chef smiled and said, you know, it's not easy to just follow the captain's back and not fall behind. The captain will one day become the One Piece King of Pirates. Wouldn't it be too humiliating to match the strength of the pirates' crew? One Piece King of Pirates. Old man's pupils shrank suddenly. Boy, are you saying, One Piece King of Pirates? Is your goal the only king of the sea, the only Gol D. Roger who conquered the Great Route? For some reason, the old man's tone became increasingly angry and louder. Do you think that the kid you follow can defeat Admiral of the Marine Headquarters, the 4 emperors of the New World, and these monsters from the sea to ascend to that unique throne? Do you think you can do such a thing? The old man shouted so loudly. Can. Chef Vivi was stunned for a moment, then said, what else is there to discuss about this kind of issue? As the captain who leads us all, isn't it a matter of course that he can become One Piece King of Pirates? Quote. Stop talking nonsense to me, little devils. Old man shouted so loudly, you who haven't experienced that era, how do you know how cruel the fight in front of the throne is? With such a loud roar, the old man's body turned into an afterimage and rushed towards the chef. So that's the case, is it the loser of Roger's era? Cook crossed his arms and said, is this what the captain called the whining of a lost dog? The chef flicked his hands violently, and 2 balls of yellow, translucent, almost solidified objects were thrown out of his hands, and the speed was no slower than the old man's speed. I don't know how cruel it is. What I do know is that no matter how sinister the wind and waves are, there is no problem. Our ship, the Platinum Drager, is a pirate ship that can fly. Our captain is the best in the world, captain. No storm can stop us. Then I will stop you from seeing me. The old man roared like this. His 2 fists were clenched quietly, and the dark hockey was wrapped around it. The heavy fists hit the 2 translucent objects flying towards him. As a strong man of the older generation, as a pirate who galloped in the sea more than 20 years ago, this old man, like many pirates, thinks it is too strange to be a pirate but can't swim. He belongs to the type of relying on himself. The body and hockey's man. However, not everything in the world can be hit with a fist. Boom. A huge explosion occurred from the place where the old man's fist touched the translucent oil block from the chef. The terrifying temperature flame and shock wave instantly wrapped the old man. Nitroglycerin, works as well as the captain said. The chef laughed. Senior. Perhaps, this is the change of times.